Hey truckers, today we're seeing part 13 of Reincarnation of the Businesswoman at School. Let's dive into the video. However, before they could realize what happened, Chu Pei-han said angrily, "Do you want to grab the house from Mixie's family?" Impossible. Pei-han, Hao Ran, Zixuan, Tianping. Yu Mixie abruptly stood up with excitement, as if she saw her lifesavers. Yu Mixie's parents also relaxed seeing that Chu Pei-han and the others came. Although they weren't clear about their family background, they knew that all of them were from either rich or powerful families. Their arrival made Yu Mixie's family feel safe. However, Yu Mixie's oldest uncle and aunt had the opposite idea. In their eyes, Chu Pei-han and the others were merely a bunch of students. Yu Mixie's aunt snapped at them, "It's our family affairs, and it's none of your business." "It is our business, and we will support Mixie," Hao Ran said affirmatively. Yu Mixie's aunt as annoyed. "You're just a bunch of kids," Yu Mixie's oldest uncle said with disdain. "So what? I think that you better leave now, and disappear forever. Otherwise, you can't bear the result," Qin Zixuan threatened. "That's interesting. Who do you think you are to threaten us?" a woman who stood beside Yu Mixie's oldest uncle said with disdain. She was Yu Mixie's oldest aunt. "We're enough to make you pay for what you've done," a cold female voice suddenly sounded from outside. And Gu Ning walked in their sight. "Boss," Hao Ran and the others called her. "Ning Ning." Yu Mixie immediately ran to Gu Ning, and felt like crying. "It's fine. I'll handle it," Gu Ning comforted her and held her hand, stepping towards them. Seeing that it was another young girl, Yu Mixie's uncles and aunt didn't care about her either. Gu Ning just gave them a cold glance before her sight fell on Yu Mixie's father. "Uncle Yu, may I know what the demolition compensation for your house is?" Yu Mixie's father respected Gu Ning, so he was willing to tell her the truth no matter what her aim was. "Our house is only 70 square meters in size, so we can get 700,000 yuan for it. And we can then use the money to buy a bigger house." Hearing that the house was worth 700,000 yuan, Yu Mixie's uncles and aunts couldn't wait to have the money in their pockets. Their greedy expressions were really disgusting. "When is the house going to be demolished?" Gu Ning asked. "We'll finish the procedure after the New Year festival, and we then need to move out within 2 months, Yu Mixie's father answered. "Great, why don't you sell this house to me, and I'll give you a simply decorated house which is 120 square meters in size in Jiehua Garden." Jiehua Garden is a living area being constructed by Xinhua Real Estate, Gu Ning said. Hearing that, everyone was astonished. Jiehua Garden was a medium-high-level living area. And a 120 square meters house was worth at least 2 million yuan. Gu Ning must be insane to exchange a much cheaper house with an expensive one. Yu Mixie's uncles and aunts were jealous of Yu Mixie's father now. They all wished that they could live in such a great house. In fact, Gu Ning had always wanted to help Yu Mixie's family, but she knew that they wouldn't accept it because it felt like alms. And Gu Ning didn't want to hurt their feelings, but now it was different. Yu Mixie's family was in trouble now, and it was a perfect time for her to help Yu Mixie. Although there were many vacant houses from Xinhua Real Estate, they were all ordinary living areas. And Gu Ning decided to give them a better one. "Miss Gu, I don't think that it's a good idea. My house is only worth 700,000 yuan, but the houses in Jiehua Garden are worth at least 2 million yuan. Yu Mixie's father declined. He wasn't a man who would take advantage of others, and Gu Ning had already helped them a lot. "Exactly, Miss Gu," Yu Mixie's mother echoed. Yu Mixie's uncles and aunt were irritated by Yu Mixie's parents. They were more than willing to accept the house in Jiehua Garden. "Don't forget that Mixie is going to work for me in the future." I'm Mixie's boss. Please just take this as her advanced bonus, Gu Ning said to calm their anxiety. Mixie's parents were aware of that, but Chu Pei-han and others didn't know that, so they were all surprised, looking to Gu Ning puzzled. However, it wasn't the right time for them to ask the question. Well, Mixie's father still thought that they shouldn't accept it. Don't worry. We're all Mixie's good friends, and friends always help each other. Mixie will work for me in the future and she'll get housing benefits after all. Please just take it as the advance. It's the same, Gu Ning said. Visit Envelben, cm for EU ovals. Hearing that, Mixie's parents changed their mind. They knew that Gu Ning was persuading them to accept her kindness without feeling guilty, but if they didn't solve the problem, their shameless relatives would keep annoying them, and they were unwilling to argue with them all the time. Wait, even if you sell this house to her, we still can share the new house with you. Mixie's aunt argued. It seemed like they wouldn't leave just because Mixie's father sold the house. Exactly. Mixie's oldest uncle echoed. You're indeed crazy people, Gu Ning sneered. She looked at them coldly, which threatened them and made them feel greatly stressed. Even so, Mixie's oldest uncle still retorted, the house is our father's property, so of course we should share it together. Is your name on the premises permit? Gu Ning asked. Mixie's oldest uncle panicked but still argued, no, but it doesn't matter. I still can share the house. Everyone was amused by his reply. Chu Pei-han even swore at him, what the f*ck. I've never seen such a shameless person before. I really want to punch you. Chu Pei-han rolled up her sleeves. It seemed like she was going to fight with them. I had the same idea. Hao Ran agreed with Chu Pei-han. Right at this moment, An Yi and Mu Ku arrived. They knew Mixie's parents too and were also willing to help. However, Mixie's uncles and aunt were slightly scared. If they were really going to fight, it was possible that they would lose because there were only 4 of them. Sorry we're late. Are we going to fight? Mu Ku asked and rolled his sleeves up. Not yet, Gu Ning replied, then turned to Mixie's uncles and aunt. Since your name isn't on the premises permit, this house has nothing to do with you. It's called laws. And if you want to take it through force, we'll call the police. Actually, Mixie's uncles and aunts knew that their names weren't on the premises permit of this house, but they were very eager to get the money. And they were so used to bullying Mixie's family, so they tried to act against the laws. Knowing that Gu Ning wasn't simple and that she was really going to call the police, Mixie's uncles and aunts hesitated. Besides, they couldn't beat Gu Ning and the others in a fight, so they left reluctantly in the end. Miss Gu, since they are gone, I think that Mixie's father opened his mouth. He hoped that Gu Ning would take back what she had just said. Uncle Yu, they only left because they were scared of us, but it doesn't mean that they will give up. I think that they will probably come back again, so please don't argue with me over the house. Let's settle it as soon as possible, Gu Ning said. Indeed, they were just scared of Gu Ning and the others, which didn't mean that they would give up. Greedy people like them wouldn't give up until they were forced to do so. Exactly. Uncle Yu, please listen to our boss this time. Hao Ran and the others persuaded Mixie's father. After hesitating for a while, Mixie's father agreed in the end. He now really didn't know how to thank Gu Ning enough. However, the new houses aren't on sale yet. We need to wait for a month. You can continue living in this old house. If the house is handed over to the government, you can rent a place. Once the new house is ready, you can move in. If they dare to cause you trouble again, don't hesitate to call the police. I'll come to sign the contract with you tomorrow, Gu Ning said. Sure, Yu Mixie's father answered. After that, Gu Ning and Yu Mixie went out with their friends for a reunion. Yu Mixie's parents invited them to eat at home to thank them for what they had done, but was declined by Gu Ning. Yu Mixie's parents understood that teenagers preferred to gather with their peers. Boss, why did you say that you're Mixie's boss? Tell us about it. The moment that they left Yu Mixie's home, Chu Pei-han asked without delay. Exactly. What happened? Hao Ran and the others all looked to Gu Ning with curiosity. Ariad updated stirise at n/vel/bin.com. I'm going to run my own company, and I need skilled workers. Mixie is good at math and she plans to study financial management, so I hired her beforehand, Gu Ning explained. It wasn't news that Gu Ning was going to run her company, so it wasn't shocking. Boss, what kind of company are you going to establish? Hao Ran asked. I feel like you're always busy since I've met you, Qin Zixuan said. Exactly. Chu Pei-han echoed. And you're always mysterious. Nobody can find you. Jade jewelry, Gu Ning replied. Jade jewelry? Have you established your company yet? Muku asked, because he was involved in the jewelry industry too, and he was interested in it. Yes, I have. Jade Beauty Jewelry in City G is my brand actually, Gu Ning said. She didn't hide the truth any longer. What? Jade Beauty Jewelry. Hearing that, everyone rounded their eyes in shock. Jade Beauty Jewelry was very famous recently and the brand was their boss's. Although they all knew that Gu Ning wasn't simple and that she was destined to build her business empire. Unexpectedly, Gu Ning's very first company was already very successful. OMG! Boss, you are really awesome. I feel like I'm having a heart attack. Hao Ran covered his chest with one hand, like he was really astonished. Boss, you must be super rich. Jade Beauty Jewelry is worth at least several billion yuan. Mu Ku said with admiration. Although Jade Beauty Jewelry only had one flagship store now, it was a high-end jewelry brand. The value of its assets was extremely high. Boss. Each of them was full of interest and discussed with excitement. Boss, how did you do it? Please tell us details, so that we can learn from you. Muku's eyes lit up and begged for Gu Ning's useful skills. Please. The others all echoed. Muku was really curious about the secret of Gu Ning's success, while the others were simply curious. Gu Ning smiled and said, Do you still remember that I told you that I cut out Jade by stone gambling? I went to play stone gambling later again and used the jade which I cut out to open a store. No way. Boss, you're so unbelievable. Everyone knows how hard it is to cut out a single piece of jade, but you are able to run a jade store just by stone gambling? Mu Ku was quite surprised. Boss, do you have jade eyes? Hao Ran joked. Although the others all had the same idea, none of them believed it. Unfortunately, it was the truth. All right, stop conjecturing. And keep it a secret among us. Don't say a word to your families, Gu Ning warned. We won't, everyone promised. Boss, since you're so rich now, we should have a luxury meal today. Come on, let's go dine in a 5-star hotel before we have fun in Dihao Clubhouse. Qin Zixuan said. Agreed, the others said with one accord. I'll call to make the reservation in Dihao Clubhouse, but is it possible that our boss will win the top prize again? Chu Pei-han said. Thinking of Gu Ning's incredible luck last time, Chu Pei-han had the strange feeling that Gu Ning was going to win the top prize again this time. I would love to see boss win the top prize again, but it isn't very likely for it to happen the second time. Unless boss does have jade eyes and is able to see which one in the box is the top prize, Hao Ran said. Although they didn't believe in jade eyes at all, Gu Ning panicked a little when they kept talking about it. Thus she decided to not win the top prize this time. All right, let's go dine together now. Which hotel? Gu Ning immediately changed the topic. Let's go to Xinyuan Hotel. It's close to Dihao Clubhouse, Chu Peihan proposed. Afterwards, a group of them took taxis heading towards Xinyuan Hotel. Coincidentally, Gu Qinxiang also invited his client to have a meal together at Xinyuan Hotel. His client was an executive of a famous company. A hotel under the company's name needed decorating, and Gu Qinxiang was eager to strike the deal. Thus, in order to show his ability and willingness, he waited for the executive in person at the entrance of the hotel. If he could strike the deal today, it would be a big deal of nearly 5 million yuan. Gu Qinxiang only had 50 million yuan in assets, so 5 million yuan was a lot in his eyes. His company's profits were rapidly decreasing, and he was running out of capital now. It was possible that he would lose money too. If he failed to settle this big deal today, his company would barely stay afloat. Therefore, Gu Qinxiang took today's meeting very seriously. When it was almost 6 p.m., Gu Qinxiang's client arrived. The executive's name was Quan Wenfeng, and he came along with his secretary and a friend. However, the man next to Quan Wenfeng shocked Gu Qinxiang. He was Jiang Su. How come Jiang Su is with Quan Wenfeng? Is Jiang Su the friend that Quan Wenfeng mentioned? When Gu Qinxiang had called Quan Wenfeng to invite him to dine together, Quan Wenfeng had told him that he already had an appointment with one of his friends. Gu Qinxiang had then invited Quan Wenfeng to come together with his friend. However, to his astonishment, Quan Wenfeng's friend was Jiang Su. How did Jiang Su meet Quan Wenfeng? Although Gu Qinxiang had many thoughts in his mind, it wasn't the right time to think about them. He immediately went over to welcome them. It's so nice to meet you, Executive Quan. Boss Gu, sorry to make you wait for us, Quan Wenfeng said, shaking hands with Gu Qinxiang. It's nothing. I just arrived too, Gu Qinxiang said. Please let me introduce you. This is the boss of Shuri Construction Material Store, Jiang Su. Quan Wenfeng introduced Jiang Su to Gu Qinxiang. What? Hearing that, Gu Qinxiang was surprised. He looked to Jiang Su and unconsciously asked, Jiang Su, since when have you become the boss of Shuri Construction Material Store? Gu Qinxiang had heard of Shuri Construction Material Store, which was popular recently, but it was beyond his imagination that Jiang Su, who he had never respected, was its boss. What is going on here? How did Jiang Su become the boss of Shuri Construction Material Store whose assets are worth at least several million yuan all of a sudden? Gu Qinxiang kept thinking to himself. Hearing that, Quan Wenfeng was surprised too. Do you know each other? Oh, Boss Gu is actually my brother-in-law, Jiang Su explained. Jiang Su and Quan Wenfeng had known each other for a short time, but they got along quite well. Otherwise, Quan Wenfeng wouldn't have come here to meet Gu Qinxiang along with Jiang Su. Gu Qinxiang planned to discuss business with him, and it wasn't appropriate if an acquaintance was there. Brother-in-law? Quan Wenfeng was slightly shocked, not because of their family relationship, but because Gu Qinxiang had no idea that Jiang Su was the boss of Shuri Construction Material Store. In addition, it seemed that they weren't close at all. Quan Wenfeng was a shrewd businessman and he instantly understood that the two didn't get along. Even so, he wouldn't point it out. New chapters will be fully updated at novl/bin.com. I borrowed some money from my friends and opened the store, Jiang Su explained to Gu Qinxiang casually. Who would lend over 10 million yuan to him? Mrs. Hao lent money to Gu Qing and Gu Man to run the beauty salon last time. Did Jiangsu borrow money from Mrs. Hao too? Seeing that Jiangsu suddenly became rich, Gu Qingxiang felt uncomfortable in his heart. Quan Wenfeng, on the other hand, had a bad impression of Gu Qingxiang because of his attitude towards Jiangsu, but he wouldn't deny the possibility that he might cooperate with Gu Qingxiang. As long as Gu Qingxiang's company was able to fulfill their needs, he would still work with him. Well, let's get inside now, Gu Qingxiang said to Quan Wenfeng when he noticed that they were still standing in the hall. After that, they walked inside. When they had just walked in, Gu Ning and the others arrived, but didn't meet them. However, the minute that they entered the hall, Gu Ning's phone rang. The caller was Xiao Ye. Gu Ning then suddenly realized that Xiao Ye and Gao Yi would arrive at City F around this time. She immediately answered it. Have you arrived yet? Just got off the plane, Xiao Ye replied. Take a taxi to Xingyuan Hotel to meet me, Gu Ning said. Sure, Xiao Ye answered. Boss, who is it? Hao Ran asked. Two of my friends. They'll dine with us later, Gu Ning said. Men or women? Chu Peihan suddenly thought of Leng Xiaohing and asked. Seeing Chu Peihan's face, Gu Ning understood what was on her mind. A couple. She rolled her eyes. However, she really missed Leng Xiaohing a lot, but he was always busy. She hadn't heard from him ever since she came back from the capital. Fine. Hearing that it wasn't Gu Ning's boyfriend, Chu Peihan was a little disappointed. Let's go inside. Gu Ning and the others then walked towards their private room. After ordering, Gu Ning took out the jade pendants she had prepared for them. These are yours. Peihan already got hers at her birthday party. Wow. Everyone was excited and thanked Gu Ning. She laid the boxes on the table and let them find their own ones. Half an hour later, before the dishes were on the table, Gao Yi and Xiao Ye arrived at the hotel. Gao Yi and Xiao Ye didn't know that Gu Ning was dining with her friends, so they were slightly surprised when they saw a group of teenagers in the room. Boss, Gao Yi and Xiao Ye called Gu Ning. Come on in. Let's have the meal first, and then we'll have fun in a clubhouse afterwards before we go back. As Gu Ning's bodyguards, Gao Yi and Xiao Ye naturally had to keep her company. And they were hungry too after a long flight. As professional killers, they didn't feel tired at all, so they would go back to Fanghua Luxury Mansion with Gu Ning. Yes, boss. Gao Yi and Xiao Ye would obey Gu Ning's order without any hesitation. The others around the table glanced at Gao Yi, Xiao Ye and Gu Ning. They wanted to ask something, but none of them did it. When Gao Yi and Xiao Ye were both seated, Gu Ning introduced them to her friends. Please let me introduce you. This is Gao Yi and Xiao Ye, they both work for me. Nice to meet you, they said, and Gao Yi along with Xiao Ye nodded slightly. Gu Ning then introduced her friends to Gao Yi and Xiao Ye. They're all my good friends. Chu Peihan, Yu Mixi, Hao Ran, Qin Zixuan, Mu Ku, and Yi and Zhang Tianping. Gao Yi and Xiao Ye kept silent unless Gu Ning asked them questions. Meanwhile, they had a natural air of coldness. In the beginning, it wasn't easy for them to enjoy themselves, but they started to get used to it as time went by. Everyone knew that Gao Yi and Xiao Ye weren't simple. After the meal, they left together, but met Jiangsu and his group in the hall by accident. Uncle! Gu Ning called Jiangsu, but ignored Gu Qingxiang, which annoyed him. Nice to meet you, Uncle Jiang. Chu Peihan and the others all greeted Jiangsu. Hi! Nice to meet you all. Did you dine here together too? Jiangsu asked. Yes, Gu Ning answered. Are you going home or? Jiangsu asked. Not yet. We'll go home later, Gu Ning replied. Be careful. After that, Gu Ning and the others left. They got in 2 taxis. Both Quan Wenfeng and Jiang Su had driven here, but they had all drunk. Quan Wenfeng's secretary would drive him back, while Jiang Su didn't have a secretary, so Quan Wenfeng said to him, "Su, you drank, so I think that you should let the designated driver in the hotel drive you home for your own safety." "I had the same idea," Jiang Su said. Although he didn't drink much, he had drunk, and it was better for him to not drive himself. It would be troublesome if he was caught by the traffic police. When a designated driver drove Jiang Su's car towards them, Gu Qingxiang was even more jealous of Jiang Su after seeing that his car was a luxurious Mercedes-Benz. Thinking of the fact that Jiang Su had always been envious of him during the past years, Gu Qingxiang now had mixed emotions because everything had completely changed. Gu Ning had reminded Jiang Su to keep a low profile. Otherwise, it was easy for her to give Jiang Su enough money to buy a car at the price of millions of yuan. Quan Wenfeng was a rich man too, but he also drove a car which was only worth several 100,000 yuan. Most rich people didn't drive cars that were too luxurious. The richer the person was, the more low profile he would be. On the contrary, only men who weren't very rich preferred to brag and show off their wealth. Gu Qingxiang was eager to talk with Jiang Su, but he didn't do it because of Quan Wenfeng's presence. Therefore, after Quan Wenfeng got in his car, Gu Qingxiang immediately stopped Jiang Su, who was about to get into his. "Hey, wait a second." "What?" Jiang Su asked. He intentionally stayed aloof from Gu Qingxiang. "Well, since you're Executive Quan's friend," Gu Qingxiang didn't finish, but his aim was quite obvious. He was worried that Jiang Su would complain in front of Quan Wenfeng because they didn't get along, so he might lose this deal. Although Quan Wenfeng didn't show any dissatisfaction towards Gu Qingxiang today, and emphasized that qualification was the most important element, Gu Qingxiang was still concerned. In addition, he also hoped that Jiang Su could help him to secure this cooperation with Quan Wenfeng. Jiang Su understood what was on Gu Qingxiang's mind, and interrupted him before he could finish. "I believe that Executive Quan is a fair man. As long as your company is qualified, he will choose your proposal. It's useless for me, who is an outsider, to say anything." After that, Jiang Su got in his car and left without delay. Gu Qingxiang was furious, and thought that Jiang Su did it on purpose, but he didn't dare to annoy Jiang Su at this moment, because he was afraid that Jiang Su would badmouth him in front of Quan Wenfeng. If so, the deal would be hopeless. Gu Ning and the others arrived at Dihao Clubhouse later. When they came to the front desk, Chu Peihan said, "Boss, come over here and let's see whether you can win the top prize again." Although Chu Peihan agreed that it wasn't very likely, she still had hope, so did everyone else. The service staff at the front desk were a little surprised that Gu Ning was the young girl who had won the top prize last time. Thousands of people would come here to have fun every day, but it was rare to see a top prize winner, thus all of them were impressed. And they were also curious to see whether Gu Ning could win the top prize once more. "Well, I will be super lucky if I can get the top prize again," Gu Ning joked. In fact, she could do it if she wanted to, but she thought that it would be hard to explain it. In order to not disappoint them, Gu Ning decided to choose the third prize, so that they could have 50% off the bill today. When Gu Ning's hand reached into the box of red envelopes, everyone was nervous and curious, as if it was a fierce game. Gu Ning used her jade eyes and took out a red envelope containing the third prize. Once the red envelope was out, Chu Peihan grabbed it and opened it without hesitation. "Wow, it's the third prize!" Although it wasn't the top prize, a third prize was surprising enough. "Boss, you're so lucky! I've never gotten any prizes out of it." "Indeed." The service staff were also surprised by Gu Ning's unbelievable luck. Afterwards, a waiter guided them to a private room. Chu Peihan made a reservation for the room which had the best view. There will be a kickboxing game later. If you feel bored, you can join it and make some money for fun, Gu Ning said to Gao Yi and Xiaoya. She saw the announcement at the door when they had just entered. As professional killers, Gao Yi and Xiaoya didn't lack money at all. They had savings of over 1 billion yuan in the Swiss bank. Even though they were chased by the killer organizations, their account would still be safe. Gu Ning advised them to have some fun because she had noticed that Gao Yi was interested in the announcement. Sure, Gao Yi said, and his eyes lit up with excitement. Although he normally practiced with Xiaoya when they were free, he wouldn't use his full force in case Xiaoya got hurt, so he didn't enjoy himself very much. What? They can fight? Hearing that, Chu Peihan and the others were excited. It's a kickboxing game which is open for challenges, so Dihao Clubhouse sets the bet. If you win, there will be a reward of 100,000 yuan. If you lose, you don't need to pay anything. You can also decide the bet ratio, Gu Ning said to Gao Yi, then turned to her friends. Oh, Gao Yi will join the game later, so you all can bet on him. He will win. Gu Ning was confident. She wasn't sure whether Gao Yi could win in a professional boxing match, but she believed that Gao Yi could do it in a kickboxing game. New chapters will be fully updated at novl/bin.com. Really? Hearing that, everyone was thrilled. None of them would doubt Gu Ning's words. I'm in! Hao Ran said with excitement. He would pay 100,000 yuan, which was all he had with him. Nevertheless, 100,000 yuan was also the limit. Me too! Qin Zixuan, Zhang Tianping, Mu Ku and Chu Peihan did the same thing as Hao Ran. And me! And Yi paid 50,000 yuan. Yu Mixi didn't have much money, so she remained silent. It was a great chance to make money. Gu Ning wouldn't allow Mixi to miss it. Mixi, I can lend you 100,000 yuan and you can join us, Gu Ning said. What? Yu Mixi was shocked, because she had never gambled before. Moreover, 100,000 yuan was a fortune in Yu Mixi's eyes, so she didn't have the courage to gamble. Relax, we won't lose. Normally, I wouldn't encourage you all to gamble, but this time is a great chance to make money. Don't worry, I'll bear the result, Gu Ning said. Gu Ning was generous, but she wasn't dumb, and she knew when the right time to spend her money was. Exactly, Mixi, let's listen to our boss this time. Everyone persuaded Yu Mixi to join them, so she agreed in the end, although she was extremely nervous. The kickboxing match wouldn't begin until 10 p.m., and it was only 8:30 p.m. Thus they enjoyed eating, drinking and chatting while waiting for the match. Gao Yi and Xiaoya wouldn't drink alcohol, they only drank fruit juice. Yu Mixi, on the other hand, joined the others in drinking alcohol. In the Gu family's house. They were watching TV in the living room, including the old lady, Lin Lijuan, Gu Xiaoxiao and Gu Qingyun who just came back from the capital. Gu Qingyun was a good-looking young boy to some extent. However, when he lay against the sofa, placing his feet on the coffee table, playing online games while swearing, he looked like a bad boy without manners. It wasn't uncommon to see a male swearing, but it was impolite to do it in front of females, like his grandmother, mother and younger sister. However, they were all used to it. Sometimes, Gu Qinxiang criticized Gu Qingyun for his rude behavior, but the old lady would argue for Gu Qingyun. Gu Qingyun was the eldest grandson in the Gu family, so the old lady always spoiled him. That being the case, Gu Qingyun was spoiled even more rotten than Gu Xiaoxiao. And he was often involved in fights and trouble. He had now grown older and more mature than before, but he inherited many negative characteristics from his family. For example, he was as selfish as his family. If anyone affected or hurt his own benefits, he would do anything to get revenge without thinking about the results. In his eyes, only his grandmother, parents and younger sister was his family. And he only protected and cared about his own family. When he came back home from his college for winter vacation, he heard that Gu Ning had slapped Gu Xiaoxiao and had even forced her to transfer. Gu Qingyun was mad and wanted to teach Gu Ning a lesson right away. However, they didn't know Gu Ning's address, nor phone number, so he had to wait until they gathered together at the family reunion. Gu Qinxiang went back home in a bad mood, but Gu Qingyun wouldn't stop swearing in front of him. "Shut your mouth! Or go back to your room!" Gu Qinxiang snapped. It was the first time that Gu Qinxiang had gotten so mad at Gu Qingyun. Gu Qingyun and the others were scared dumb. "Qinxiang, what is wrong with you?" Gu Qinxiang's mother, the old lady, was displeased. "What's wrong with me? Do you know who I met today? Jiang Su. Do you know what his title is now? He's the boss of Shuri Construction Material Store. He now has dozens of millions of yuan and a Mercedes-Benz." Gu Qinxiang said angrily. "What?" Hearing that, everyone rounded their eyes in shock. In their eyes it was impossible for Jiang Su to own dozens of millions of yuan and drive a Mercedes-Benz. Where did he get so much money to run his business? Lin Lijuan asked. Her face was distorted in jealousy. She was so used to being better than them, but now everything suddenly changed. Gu Man and Gu Qing had a beauty salon with millions of yuan in assets, and Jiang Su was now the boss of a construction material store with a wealth of dozens of millions of yuan. How come her poor relatives became so rich overnight? "I think that Mrs. Hao lent them money," Gu Qinxiang said. The Hao family had thousands of millions of yuan in assets, so 10 million yuan was nothing to them. Lin Lijuan was jealous again because Mrs. Hao never showed any respect towards her, but treated Gu Qing and Gu Man as her close friends. How could they do that? Gu Qing and Gu Man are both rich now, so they should share their money with me. I'm their biological mother. The old lady was in a rage. She never stopped trying to snatch money from her two daughters. And now the old lady found out Jiang Su had dozens of millions of yuan in assets. She couldn't wait to share the wealth even though it had nothing to do with her. Gu Qingyun and Gu Xiaoxiao didn't think that Jiang Su's and Gu Man's wealth was theirs, but they were also displeased that their poor relatives became rich all of a sudden. Other than that, he's my client's friend. I wanted him to help me get the deal, but he rejected me. Gu Qinxiang took it for granted that Jiang Su should help him to settle the deal with Quan Wenfeng. What? How dare he do that? The old lady almost shouted. It's insane. Let me call him right now. Saying that, the old lady took out her phone, but was stopped by Gu Qinxiang. Mom, please don't get involved in this. If he gets annoyed and badmouths me in front of my client, it will be hopeless for me to settle the deal. He wouldn't dare. The old lady was furious. It's possible. Gu Ning ruined Dad's deal last time, didn't she? Gu Xiaoxiao said. She still believed that it was Gu Ning's fault and never felt guilty for her actions. What? Gu Ning ruined Dad's deal? I think that I need to beat her sometime. Gu Qingyun was mad, and made up his mind to punch Gu Ning. Gu Qingyun wasn't a gentleman at all, and he would beat females as always. In fact, Gu Qinxiang knew that it was the fact that his company's proposal wasn't good enough, but he was reluctant to admit it, so he could only blame Gu Ning for his own failure. What should we do now? What if Jiang Su ruins your deal this time too? Lin Lijuan was worried. I don't know, Gu Qinxiang replied. He lost his patience. If he knew the answer, he wouldn't be so anxious. Because of the shocking news about Jiang Su, Gu Qinxiang's family had a terrible day. Even though Gu Qinxiang wouldn't allow his mother to call Jiangsu, the old lady still called Gu Qingyang and kept complaining. La test novls on, n, vel by slash, dot, co. Gu Qingyang was also amazed by the news, but he had already learned his lesson after Gu Ning's warning last time. Gu Qingyang was jealous too, but he knew that it had nothing to do with him, and he had no right to be involved. In addition, Jiangsu, Gu Qing and Gu Man were all rich now. It was unwise for him to annoy them again. Gu Qinxiang had worked hard for over a dozen years to become a successful businessman with 20 million yuan in assets, while Gu Qing and Gu Man became rich within such a short time. Several months ago, they couldn't afford dozens of thousands of yuan. Gu Qingyang wasn't an idiot, and he knew that he had to respect them now. Therefore, Gu Qingyang just stayed quiet and listened to his mother complaining the entire time. After hanging up with his mother, Gu Qingyang told his wife, Wen Yulan, what he had heard from his mother. Wen Yulan had the same feelings as him. She was jealous of Jiangsu, but understood that she had to respect them from now on. Change was the only constant, and the wheel of fortune turned. Jiangsu went back home and told Gu Qing and Gu Man about what had happened today. They understood that Gu Qinxiang's family would find out about it sooner or later. Meanwhile, they were also worried that Gu Qinxiang's family would cause them trouble again. When it was almost 10 p.m. in Dihao Clubhouse, a handsome host walked out onto the boxing stage and gave a short opening speech. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dihao Clubhouse. We'll be holding a kickboxing match tonight on this stage. There will be 3 boxers on behalf of Dihao Clubhouse, and you may challenge any one of them. If you win, you can go home with 100,000 yuan. And if you lose, don't worry, you don't need to pay anything. It's a kickboxing match, so we'll set a bet for fun. You may decide the bet ratio, but be careful, because you have to pay for the result if you lose, the host said. After that, 3 men walked out, standing on the stage. Boxer number 1 was tall and muscular, boxer number 2 was a man of medium size, while boxer number 3 was thin and short. However, all of them were professional boxers and it wasn't wise to judge them from appearance. Most of the people came here tonight for this kickboxing game, so many of them were interested in challenging. At the same time, only a few of them dared to set the bet ratio, except for those who were either rich or confident. Gao Yi wasn't in a hurry to challenge them, but had decided to see their performance first. Many of the audience went up to the stage to challenge the 3 boxers, but none of them could stay on the stage for over 5 minutes. Finally, a man set the bet ratio to gamble for a time, and most of the audience bet that the boxers would win, because they were professionals. The result wasn't surprising at all. The boxer won and the man who set the bet ratio lost over 10 million yuan. After a long time, no one could beat the boxers. It was time for Gao Yi to go up. He went up to the stage and challenged boxer number 2. However, except for Gu Ning and the others who bet on him, hundreds of audience members in the hall bet on boxer number 2. The odds were 1:1. Seeing that most of the audience bet on boxer number 2, Gu Ning laughed. They could win over 10 million yuan this time. Once Gao Yi won, the money would be his. Gu Ning and Xiaoyu stayed calm, while Chu Peihan and the others were nervous. Before long, the game began. Tai Jun, Tai Jun, Tai Jun. The audience under the stage shouted the name of boxer number 2 to encourage him, but voices that supported Gao Yi were barely heard in the crowd's acclamation. The moment the match began, Gao Yi and Tai Jun moved quickly. The boxers on behalf of Dihao Clubhouse had constantly won tonight, so Tai Jun was a little arrogant now, even though Gao Yi was confident enough to set the bet ratio. Tai Jun hit Gao Yi immediately, but Gao Yi didn't avoid him. Instead, he grabbed Tai Jun's hand like lightning. The scene shocked the audience. None of them could believe his or her eyes. Jesus! It's impossible. Is it real? The audience burst into discussion. Wow. E is so awesome. Hao Ran and the others shouted with excitement. Tai Jun was amazed too, and struggled to get rid of Gao Yi. Tai Jun was a professional boxer, so Gao Yi wasn't able to beat him down within seconds, but it still wasn't easy for Tai Jun to get rid of Gao Yi's control. Right now, Tai Jun didn't dare to despise Gao Yi, because he realized that he had met a powerful opponent. Afterwards, Tai Jun attacked Gao Yi again with full force. His heavy fists hit towards Gao Yi without hesitation. Read the latest stories and novilbin.com. Gao Yi didn't meet his fists, but instead stepped backwards. And when Tai Jun focused on attacking Gao Yi with his fists, Gao Yi seized the chance to kick Tai Jun's leg. Although Tai Jun tried to avoid it, he was kicked right in the calf. He didn't fall down immediately, but stumbled backwards a few steps, and his calf ached. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. Within a short time, Tai Jun was noticeably weaker than Gao Yi, which made those who bet on him feel anxious. They shouted again to encourage him, Tai Jun, fight! Tai Jun, fight! Tai Jun, fight! Tai Jun understood that it wouldn't be an easy game this time, and he was mad too. He got his balance back and attacked Gao Yi once more with his fists and kicks at the same time. Gao Yi immediately reacted and moved more quickly than Tai Jun. It was obvious that Gao Yi was better than Tai Jun at fighting. If it continued, Tai Jun was doomed to fail. Right when everyone had that same idea in mind, Tai Jun was kicked off the stage by Gao Yi with a loud sound. Gao Yi won. Yes! Yes! No one was more excited than Hao Ran and his friends. They had easily won a lot tonight. From the beginning to the end, Yumixi was extremely nervous, but luckily, she was one of the few winners too. What? Why didn't I bet on Gao Yi? Who knew that he would win? The audience burst into discussion again. And most of the audience regretted that they made the wrong decision. I challenge you. Boxer number 1 said to Gao Yi. Boxer number 1 was named De Peng. He was 35, tall, muscular and extremely strong. He was also better than Tai Jun, otherwise, he wouldn't challenge Gao Yi after Tai Jun lost. However, he wasn't 100% confident that he would win, because Gao Yi really was an ace fighter. However, it was exciting when ace fighters met each other. De Peng didn't want to miss this great chance just because Tai Jun lost the game. Even if he failed, he could still afford the result. No problem, but I'll set the bet ratio. Gao Yi accepted his challenge. He hadn't enjoyed himself enough yet. Sure, De Peng replied. After that, it was another round of betting. However, before it began, the audience had to pay for the last round. In the last round, Gao Yi received 12.652 million yuan from those who bet on Tai Jun and 100,000 yuan reward. In other words, he made 12.752 million yuan in all. All of the money was transferred into the bank card that Gu Ning had given him instead of his own bank card, because it was more convenient for him to use the domestic bank card in this country. Because he could only transfer money or swipe his Swiss bank card in particular places, which was inconvenient. In addition, he had no intention to take the money as his own. On the contrary, he planned to use it to deal with business for Gu Ning when needed. Before the second round began, everyone discussed with animation over who would be the winner. Although Gao Yi beat Tai Jun, regular customers of Dihao Clubhouse all knew that De Peng was better than Tai Jun. Thus they didn't lose faith in De Peng after Tai Jun's failure. Who do you think will win? Hard to tell. Gao Yi is awesome, but De Peng isn't weak and is better than Tai Jun. Who should I bet on then? Depeng dared to challenge Gao Yi, so he must be confident to win. I'll bet on Depeng. I'll bet on Gao Yi. Read lat stchers on n/v/l/b/i.cm. I'll bet on Depeng. I think that the man has to be strong if he dares to challenge Yi. What do you think, boss? Hao Ran asked, not because he didn't believe in Gao Yi, but because he trusted Gu Ning more. Gao Yi will win, Gu Ning said affirmatively. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. Gu Ning trusted Gao Yi and everyone believed in Gu Ning. So since Gu Ning said that Gao Yi would win, they all bet on Gao Yi. Yu Mixi did as well. Before long, the second round began. The amount of people who bet on Gao Yi was the same as the amount who bet on Depeng. The minute that the host announced that the match began, Depeng slammed his fist towards Gao Yi's chest. His attack was swift and threatening. Gao Yi avoided it at once, but Depeng also reacted quickly. He turned to the direction in which Gao Yi had ducked away. It was a tense moment. This time, Gao Yi didn't hide anymore, but hit Depeng's fist directly. When their fists met in the air, both of them were knocked backwards a few steps by the force. Depeng was really better and stronger than Tai Jun, but it wasn't stressful for Gao Yi at all. Gao Yi was a professional killer, and had been trained cruelly. Those boxers were hardly comparable to him. In the following minutes, the two fought violently against each other with fists and kicks. In the beginning, it seemed even, but Gao Yi soon took control. Depeng didn't realize that Gao Yi was a more powerful opponent than he had imagined until now. He was unwilling to admit it, but he knew that he was doomed to fail. Anyway, Depeng enjoyed the competition with Gao Yi. The second round only lasted 1 minute longer than the first one, and Depeng failed in the end. When Gao Yi punched Depeng from the stage, those who bet on Gao Yi burst into acclamation and applause. Some also regretted that they didn't bet on Gao Yi. All of a sudden, Yu Mixi, who had been so tight on budget, now had 200,000 yuan in her pocket. She had never seen so much money before, and her hands were trembling when she got her bank card back. After the second round, Gao Yi received another 4.377 million yuan from those who bet on Depeng and 100,000 yuan reward. Till now, Gao Yi made almost 20 million yuan. Boxer number 3 was weaker than boxer number 1, so he didn't dare to challenge Gao Yi, because he knew that he couldn't win. No one else challenged Gao Yi, so he went back to their private room afterwards. Yi, you're so awesome. Exactly. Can you teach us some fighting skills? Gao Yi didn't answer their questions, not because he didn't want to, but because it wasn't up to him. All right, I'll let him teach you if he's free, Gu Ning said. Hearing that, they were all excited. Since Gu Ning agreed, Gao Yi wouldn't reject. It wasn't a problem after all. They didn't stay in the clubhouse for too long and left before 12 a.m. Because they all drank, designated drivers of Dihao Clubhouse would drive them home. Yu Mixi and Annie got in Chu Peihan's car, and the other 3 boys shared with Hao Ran, while Gu Ning, Gao Yi along with Xiaoyu took a taxi heading straight to Fanghua Luxury Mansion. I bought you a new apartment where I live, and you can stay there, Gu Ning said. Sure, Gao Yi and Xiaoyu replied. When they arrived at Fanghua Luxury Mansion, Gu Ning didn't guide them inside at once, but instead brought them to a nearby hotel. The apartment is well decorated, but there are no daily necessities. It hasn't been cleaned either. You can stay in this hotel tonight and move in tomorrow. No problem, Gao Yi and Xiaoyu answered. Gu Ning then gave them the keys. Your new apartment is number 1201 in Zone F, and mine is number 901 in Zone G. We live right across from each other. In half a year, we'll move to the capital and stay there. Go buy a car tomorrow for the convenience of transportation. You can make the decision of what car you want to buy. That's all for today, and I'll call you if needed. No problem, Gao Yi and Xiaoya answered. After that, Gu Ning went back home. It was very late, and Gu Man was already asleep. Gu Ning tried her best to keep her movements quiet in order to not wake Gu Man up. She took a bath and lay on her bed, but couldn't fall asleep. Once it was quiet, she kept missing Ling shouting. However, she wasn't able to contact him now. Ling shouting also missed Gu Ning a lot, and he was eager to leave the military base. The next day, Kame Beauty Saloon was going to hold its annual event. Gu Qing got up at 7 a.m. to prepare breakfast for her family. Seeing Gu Ning, Jiang Xinyue was more than happy. She hadn't seen Gu Ning in a long time, so she kept talking to Gu Ning. Nevertheless, Gu Ning wasn't impatient at all. During breakfast, Gu Ning asked Jiang Su, "Uncle, has Gu Qingxiang caused you trouble recently? He's competing for a hotel decoration project, and he invited Executive Quan to dine together yesterday trying to get the chance." I was with Executive Quan at that time, but I had no idea that it was Gu Qingxiang who called Executive Quan, so I went to the meal with Executive Quan. Gu Qingxiang then found out that I'm the boss of Shuri Construction Materials Store. He was worried that I would badmouth him in front of Executive Quan, causing him to lose the chance, but at the same time, he also hoped that I would help him. I rejected him though, Jiang Su said. Although Jiang Su didn't get along with Gu Qingxiang, he wasn't mean and wouldn't badmouth Gu Qingxiang, but neither would he help him. Since Gu Qingxiang already knows that you're the boss of Shuri Construction Materials Store, I think that the old lady must be aware of it too. Did she call? Gu Ning asked. No. Maybe Gu Qingxiang stopped her because he doesn't want to annoy me in case I badmouth him in front of Executive Quan. They all knew what kind of person Gu Qingxiang was. Well, I'm afraid the family reunion won't be peaceful, Gu Qing sighed. Although the old lady didn't call them to argue with them, it was impossible that she would stay quiet during the family reunion. It'll be fine. No matter what she says, it's meaningless. Gu Ning despised the old lady's rude behavior, but she wasn't afraid at all. After breakfast, Gu Qing and Gu Man went to their beauty salon and Jiang Su left for his work. Gu Ning also had something to deal with today, but she wasn't in a hurry, so she stayed home with Jiang Xinyue for a while longer. Around 10 a.m., Gu Ning received in Guangyao's call. "Boss, I just got the invitation letter from the Chow family, which is the #1 richest family in City F. They're going to host a party the day after tomorrow, and all the successful businessmen will be attending it. They also hope that the real boss of Shenhua Real Estate could show up." "What do you think?" and Guangyao asked. "I don't want to be exposed yet. You may go on behalf of Shenhua, and just tell them that the real boss isn't in City F, Gu Ning said. "Sure," and Guangyao replied. Gu Ning then told Guangyao about what had happened to Yumixi's family and told him to prepare a contract. She would go to Yumixi's place with a lawyer later. After hanging up with Gu Ning, Guangyao immediately asked his secretary to prepare the contract and choose a great apartment. Li Zuan also called Gu Ning and was ready to go out with her. Gu Ning called Yumixi beforehand. Her family was busy working in the small breakfast shop, so Gu Ning and Li Zuan went to meet them right away. "Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. When they arrived, Yumixi's parents signed the contract after reading through it. Although they had already signed the contract, the new apartment wasn't theirs yet, because Jehua Garden wasn't able to provide a premises permit for it yet. Nevertheless, the contract came to effect, and none of them were willing to break the law. After that, Gu Ning and Li Zuan left. Gu Ning went to Kame Beauty Salon to check on its condition afterwards. It was crowded in Kame Beauty Salon in the morning, and most of them were VIPs, while many had just joined their VIP club. All the VIPs got a small gift. And although it wasn't very expensive, it wasn't cheap. Some VIPs also won some prizes, which was a fun experience for them. Meanwhile, the luckiest ones won the top prizes, which were the jade pendants from Jade Beauty Jewelry. Everyone around them were envious, but each of them only had one chance to play the lucky draw. Gu Ning didn't stay there for long and left when it was almost 12 p.m. Just a while after Gu Ning left the beauty salon, she received Gao Yi's call. Gao Yi and Xiao Yi were both efficient and they had settled everything within a morning. They bought a black Land Rover as their means of transportation. Up.dfrm no/v/e/lb in.co/m. Even though Gao Yi and Xiao Yi had been chased by the killer organizations, they had never lost their legal documents. Gu Ning hadn't got her driving license yet, even though she was actually a skillful driver. Without a driving license, it was better for her to not drive. Gao Yi and Xiao Yi hadn't eaten yet, so Gu Ning told them to dine together. Around 3 p.m. in the afternoon, a big scandal hit City G like a strong windstorm. The vice mayor, Liu Shirkuan, the head of the Department of Transportation, Wei Qingguan, the chairman of the Hongyun Group, Fang Changxing, along with several government officials who had close relationships with Liu Shirkuan, were arrested by the police at the same time. Their criminal evidence was exposed gradually. The vice mayor, Liu Shirkuan, were found guilty of corruption. The amount of money he had illegally accepted exceeded 1 billion yuan, and he was involved in the murder of the previous head of the Department of Transportation. The head of the Department of Transportation, Wei Qingguan, was found guilty of bribery and corruption, and the bribes were mainly from the Hongyun Group. Several other office leaders of the government were also arrested for the same crime. The chairman of the Hongyun Group, Fang Changxing, had committed different kinds of crimes during the past 3 years. Hotels and restaurants under the name of Hongyun Group were also involved in many scandals. It happened so fast that Liu Shirkuan and the others were struck dumb when they were arrested, but it was impossible for them to argue in front of the solid proof. Liu Shirkuan's political ally had tried to use his power to shut the scandal down, but unexpectedly, it had already gone viral on the internet and across the country within hours. Thus, in order to not be involved in this mess, Liu Shirkuan and the others were abandoned by their political ally. As for what Liu Shirkuan and the others had done, people were furious and slammed them fiercely. Gu Ning had made a reservation for some of the Hongyun Group's properties. However, its properties hadn't been seized yet and would be put up for auction right after Fang Changxing was sentenced by the court. Although there was solid proof of what they had done, it still took time to finish the legal procedures. Gu Ning just smiled slightly when she heard the news. It wasn't surprising at all in her eyes. And Guangyao, on the other hand, was quite shocked by the news. He thought that Hongyun real estate would cause them trouble when Jingyang Street was under construction, and he was even mentally prepared to fight against Hongyun by then. However, to his astonishment, the whole Hongyun Group was in big trouble now before they were even going to develop Jingyang Street. Besides, Fang Zhongxing certainly would be sentenced to jail, and nobody was able to run Hongyun Group in that case. And Guangyao didn't know whether Gu Ning was aware of it yet, so he called Gu Ning without delay. Gu Ning told Guangyao that she had already heard the news and invited him to dine together this afternoon along with his secretary, Zhang Xuanjie, and his lawyer, Li Zuan. They would meet at 6 p.m., so Gu Ning along with Gao Yi and Xiao Yi arrived at the restaurant when it was just past 5 p.m. Within minutes, Guangyao together with Zhang Xuanjie and Li Zuan came inside too. They didn't know Gao Yi and Xiao Yi, so they had no idea of their relationship with Gu Ning. Thus they called Gu Ning Miss Gu, instead of boss. "Please have a seat," Gu Ning said to them. After they were all seated, Gu Ning introduced them to one another. "This is Gao Yi and she is Xiao Yi. Both of them are my bodyguards and work for me. And Guangyao is the chairman of Xinhua Real Estate. This is his secretary, Zhang Xuanjie, and his lawyer, Li Zuan." They nodded to each other after Gu Ning's introduction. The thing is that I'm going to acquire some of the Hongyun Group's properties, because Hongyun is doomed after the big scandal. We are gathering here today to settle the deal, Gu Ning said. What? Acquire some of the Hongyun Group's properties? Hearing that, and Guang Yao and the others were amazed. It was a highly profitable deal if anyone could get some of the Hongyun Group's properties, but it required a considerable amount of money. Xinhua Real Estate couldn't provide a lot of funds. And although Jade Beauty Jewelry had a lot of assets, most of them were immovable property. Meanwhile, they also understood that Gu Ning had to be prepared for it since she said so, thus they didn't doubt the possibility. Gu Ning then added, Hongyun Group has a new construction site in City J. It's a big living area. And they have a new shopping mall under construction. Its quality isn't bad, so I think that we can acquire both the new living area and the new shopping mall. Other than that, there are 7 more shopping malls, 6 4-star hotels, and 5 restaurants under the name of the Hongyun Group in 3 second-tier cities in Province D. We can take over all of them. Apart from the shopping malls, we need to redecorate all of the hotels and restaurants, which may take a long period. Time is money, so we have to be quick and efficient. However, quality is still the most important thing that we should always make allowances for. Everyone was surprised again by Gu Ning's thorough investigation of Hongyun. It seemed that she had known Hongyun Group would be in a mess earlier on. Although they were all confused about how Gu Ning was able to find out about it, no one asked the question. I've already gotten permission from an important figure in politics. Thus if no accidents happen, those properties will be ours soon, Gu Ning said. Yan Jinglin had promised her, and Gu Ning wouldn't doubt it. Even if any accidents happened, she could turn to Lung shouting for help. Anyway, she made up her mind to get those properties of Hongyun. Ariad updated estirise at n/vel/bin.com. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. And Guangyao and the others had known how powerful Gu Ning's network was ever since they had found out that Jade Beauty Jewelry was Gu Ning's brand. With the support of the mayor, several of the richest families, and the Qing gang, it was hard for Gu Ning to fail in City G. Therefore, they now completely believed in Gu Ning. In their eyes, Gu Ning wasn't a teenager at all, but a shrewd businesswoman who had been involved in business for at least dozens of years. Once Gu Ning made a decision, her staff would be occupied with work 24/7. Luckily, the New Year festival was just 3 days away, and they would be on vacation the day after tomorrow. Moreover, they were willing to be busy, because it meant that they were making money. Gao Yi and Xiao Yim moved into Fenghua Luxury Mansion that night. They sent Gu Ning back to Zone G and didn't go to Zone F until Gu Ning disappeared from their sight. Gu Man ate along with Gu Qing and her family. It was a busy day for them too, and they were both exhausted. The first thing that Gu Ning did when she got home was to massage them and secretly put her power into their bodies to allay their tiredness. It wasn't the first time that Gu Ning had massaged them, so they were used to it. Although they were tired today, they enjoyed it, because many of their VIPs renewed their membership and they had also gotten many new VIPs today. Gu Ning, on the other hand, didn't think that it was a great success. Kame Beauty Salon provided good service and products, but its effects weren't very obvious, because there weren't many effective skincare products in the market yet. Thus Gu Ning planned to replace all the skincare products in Kame Beauty Salon with her own, once her medicine company was established. As long as the skincare products were obviously effective, people would be willing to pay for it. Oh, we've been so busy these days, and we haven't shopped for the New Year festival at all. Why don't we go shopping together tomorrow? Gu Qing proposed. Oh, I totally forgot about it. Gu Man suddenly realized after Gu Qing brought it up. Gu Ning had the same reaction. Sue, are you free tomorrow? Can you help us deliver the goods that we buy for the New Year festival tomorrow? Gu Qing asked Jiang Su. I need to wait for a client tomorrow morning, but I can help you with the goods in the afternoon, Jiangsu replied. Don't bother, uncle, Gu Ning declined. I can make a call and let my staff help us. Gu Ning then said to Gu Man, Mom, I have 2 people who work for me as my secretary, driver and bodyguards. They are a couple and both are orphans without any family. I am probably the closest person to them, so I invited them to spend the New Year festival with us. So we can shop with them tomorrow. Hearing that, Gu Man had deep sympathy for them and agreed at once. No problem, they're welcome. Gu Ning went back to her home later, while Gu Man kept chatting with Gu Qing in Gu Qing's place. When Gu Ning got home, she called Gao Yi and told them that they were going to shop together tomorrow. Once she was free, Gu Ning couldn't help thinking of Leng Xiaoting. What is he doing now? She thought to herself. The minute she thought about that, her phone rang, and the caller was precisely Leng Xiaoting. Ning Ning! Leng Xiaoting greeted her and sounded like he hadn't seen her in ages. He had stayed in the military base these past few days and couldn't call Gu Ning or even open his phone to see photos of her, which tortured him. Hearing Leng Xiaoting's voice, Gu Ning's heart skipped a beat. Xiaoting! Gu Ning missed him too. It was normal if they hadn't seen each other for a few days, but it worried her that she hadn't heard from him at all. I miss you so much, Leng Xiaoting said. Gu Ning's heart beat faster. I miss you too. They didn't end the call until they had spoken for 2 hours. The next day, Gu Man and Gu Qing didn't go to the beauty salon, they instead went to shop with Gu Ning along with Gao Yi and Xiaoya. There were only 5 seats in the car, so it could only accommodate 5 people. Thus Jiang Xinyue stayed at home. When the Gu Ning, Gu Man and Gu Qing appeared, Gao Yi and Xiaoya immediately got out of the car and opened the car doors for them. Hi, Yi and Ya, this is my mom and this is my aunt, Gu Ning said to them. It's so nice to meet you. Gao Yi and Xiaoya greeted Gu Man and Gu Qing with great respect. Nice to meet you too. Gu Man and Gu Qing replied politely. Mom, aunt, this is Gao Yi and this is Xiaoya, Gu Ning introduced. Well, I think that we can just call you Gao and Xiao, Gu Man said, because Gao Yi and Xiaoya seemed young. Sure, Gao Yi and Xiaoya replied. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. After that, they got in the car and Gao Yi was the driver. They drove straight to the biggest shopping mall in City F. The New Year festival was around the corner, so there were many people shopping in the supermarket on the first floor. In the past, Gu Ning's family could only afford cheap stuff, but now everything was different. They could buy anything they liked and wanted. Gu Qing and Gu Man were busy shopping, while Gao Yi and Xiaoya helped them carry packages along the way. In the beginning, Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't want to bother Gao Yi and Xiaoya, but Gu Ning said that Gao Yi and Xiaoya were both strong enough to help them, so Gu Man and Gu Qing agreed. When it was almost 10 a.m., Gu Ning received Qian's call. The minute that Gu Ning answered her call, Qian complained, Gu Ning, you've disappeared for so long. Why didn't you tell me that you're back? If Yi didn't tell me, I probably wouldn't know about it. Although Qian and Gu Ning seldom contacted each other, their friendship didn't fall apart. There were friends who you could always talk to even though you hadn't heard from them in a long time. All right, it's my fault. Are you free this morning? Let me buy you a meal. Gu Ning felt a little guilty and she also thought that it was time to meet with Qian. Of course yes. Even if I wasn't not free, I would clear my schedule for you. Qian said, like she wouldn't let Gu Ning escape again. Gu Ning felt like laughing, and asked, what do you want to have? Let's go have steak. I strongly recommend a Western restaurant to you. I go there a lot, Qian said. No problem. When shall we meet? Gu Ning asked. 12, and Qian said. When the New Year festival came, thieves and robbers gathered too. Right as Gu Ning and the others left the supermarket, they heard a horrified scream. A robber! They looked towards the voice and saw a young man running ahead with a handbag. A woman was chasing behind him, but she was wearing high heels and it was impossible for her to catch up to the robber. Gu Ning recognized the woman, and there was a little grudge between them too. The woman was Qin Yiqing, Qin Yifan's older sister. Although Gu Ning disliked her, Gu Ning wasn't a hater nor a mean person, so she said to Gao Yi, stop him. Yes, madam, Gao Yi replied. He put the bags in his hands down on the ground and stretched out his leg when the robber ran by his side. The robber stumbled and fell heavily. Gao Yi then instantly got control of him and grabbed the handbag back. Everyone around was amazed by the scene and looked at Gao Yi with admiration. Qin Yiqing ran up to them and Gao Yi gave the handbag back to her. Thank you so much, sir, Qin Yiqing said. Qin Yiqing was proud and snobbish, but she had good manners. After that, Qin Yiqing noticed Gu Ning and was surprised as well as embarrassed, because she thought of what she had said in front of Gu Ning previously. Qin Yiqing had mixed emotions. Although she knew that it was her fault, she was reluctant to apologize. Gu Ning didn't care. She turned around, walking away with Gu Man. Qin Yiqing also felt relieved. The robber was released because he didn't cause any damage. Gu Man and Gu Qing continued shopping afterwards. They went to buy wine and cigarettes later. The cigarettes were for Jiangsu and the wines were for the meals. Gu Qing chose cigarettes according to Jiangsu's preference. And the best red wine in this store was 85-foot Lafite, which cost 12,000 yuan a bottle, and only 3 bottles were left in the store. Gu Qing and Gu Man thought that it was too expensive. Find new stories on nov/elbin.com. Ning Ning, it's too expensive. Indeed. Gu Qing and Gu Man were both amazed by the price. However, the moment they said that, a female voice sounded behind them. It's 85 Lafite. If you can't afford it, don't walk inside then. Exactly, another female voice echoed with disdain. People around them heard it and all turned to look. Seeing the newcomers, Gu Man frowned. Obviously, she didn't like them. Oh, isn't it Gu Man? The woman said with surprise when Gu Man turned around, but she was pretending and ridiculed Gu Man on purpose. The woman was called Su Xinlan. She was the wife of the owner of the factory where Gu Man had worked. Her family was rich, so she always thought that she was better than others, especially Gu Man. Gu Man had gotten pregnant before getting married, and Su Xinlan had often ridiculed Gu Man because of it. Yes, Gu Man answered calmly and ignored her. However, the woman wouldn't miss a good chance to humiliate Gu Man in public. Oh, did you quit your job and find a better one, so that you can afford all the stuff? Yes, Gu Man gave her a perfunctory answer. Su Xinlan was mad at Gu Man's attitude and raised her voice. Gu Man, I'm talking to you. Mind your attitude. Gu Man looked to Su Xinlan coldly and said, Miss Su, if you don't like my attitude, stop talking to me. Gu Man's character had changed a lot recently, and she wouldn't tolerate people's unfair behavior anymore. Su Xinlan was furious. In the beginning, Gu Ning didn't defend Gu Man, because she was curious to see whether her mother was able to handle it herself. Luckily, Gu Man handled it very well, and Gu Ning felt happy for her mother. Pack these 3 bottles. I'll take them, Su Xinlan said to the attendant and looked at Gu Man with disdain. She believed that Gu Man couldn't afford the wine. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. I'll pay for the 3 bottles, Gu Ning said and took out a bank card giving it to the attendant. Ning Ning. Gu Man and Gu Qing wanted to stop her. Although they were rich now, the wine was too expensive. It's fine. We're shopping for the New Year festival after all. Gu Ning comforted them. Since Gu Ning insisted, Gu Qing and Gu Man agreed in the end. I asked for the wine before you. Su Xinlan ran to them and shouted. Where is the proof? Gu Ning asked. Su Xinlan was irritated again. However, before she could say anything, Gu Ning had already paid the bill. After that, Xiaoya took the bottles of red wine and they left right away. Su Xinlan was in a rage, but could do nothing about it. When it was about 20 minutes from 12 p.m., Gu Qing and Gu Man were almost finished shopping. Gu Ning had an appointment with Qian, so she didn't go home with them, but she let Gao Yi and Xiaoya drive Gu Man and Gu Qing back. The Western restaurant where Gu Ning was going to meet Qian wasn't far from this shopping mall, so Gu Ning walked straight to it. She arrived at the appointed Western restaurant 5 minutes before 12 p.m. Gu Ning didn't walk inside, but called Qian first. Qian would get there within 2 minutes, so Gu Ning decided to wait for her downstairs. However, a group of people whom Gu Ning disliked arrived earlier than Qian. They were Qin Zheng and Chen Ziyao. However, what surprised Gu Ning was that the two walked hand in hand. Obviously, there was something going on between them. They didn't see Gu Ning until they came near, and both of them were struck dumb when they noticed Gu Ning. To their astonishment, Gu Ning appeared in their sight all of a sudden. And they immediately loosed their hands. Or to be specific, it was more likely that Qin Jing got rid of Chen Ziyao's hand. There was nothing between him and Gu Ning now, but he was unconscionably worried that Gu Ning would be upset. Chen Ziyao was quite displeased that Qin Jing was eager to get rid of her. She knew that Qin Jing cared about Gu Ning, which annoyed her. Why are you here? Qin Jing asked. Why can't I be here? Gu Ning responded. She thought that Qin Jing was being a little ridiculous. Qin Jing was struck speechless, and felt embarrassed. Let's go now. Chen Ziyao didn't want them to keep talking, so she interrupted and pulled Qin Jing upstairs. Qin Jing wasn't happy about that, but he didn't say anything. Although he ached to reach out and hold Gu Ning close, Gu Ning obviously didn't want to be near him, so he didn't stay any longer and followed Chen Ziyao going upstairs. No sooner had Qin Jing and Chen Ziyao walked upstairs than Qian got here. Seeing Gu Ning, Qian complained, If I didn't call you, would you totally forget about me? Impossible. You know that I left City F once the winter vacation began, and I just came back the day before yesterday. I know that it's my fault that I've been too busy recently to call you, Gu Ning explained. Fine, Qian said. And they walked upstairs afterwards. It was lunchtime and there were many people in the restaurant. Unfortunately, Gu Ning was seated not far from Qin Jing and Chen Ziyao, so they saw each other once more. Updates tnvel/by.com. Qin Jing was distracted ever since Gu Ning appeared. Even though he understood that it was impossible for him and Gu Ning to be together again, he was reluctant to accept the truth. He was curious about why Gu Ning suddenly became so charming as well as outstanding after they had broken up. Back when they had been together, Gu Ning was like nobody. Qin Jing, what are you doing? Chen Ziyao was mad and questioned him. In fact, Chen Ziyao had a good impression of Qin Jing, but didn't like him very much. The reason why they became boyfriend and girlfriend was because they had slept together after both of them had gotten drunk at a party. And now that Qin Jing was her boyfriend, she naturally wouldn't allow him to admire other girls. Qin Jing didn't answer Chen Ziyao's question, but drew his look back. They were in a public place, so Chen Ziyao wasn't willing to quarrel with Qin Jing either, and they both ate in silence. After the meal, Qian went back to work in the hospital, while Gu Ning went home. Gu Qingyang's family arrived at around 2 p.m. Their family reunion was appointed at the Friendship Restaurant, so they booked a room at a nearby hotel. The appointed time of their family reunion meal was 6 p.m. Gu Qingxiang and Gu Qingyang's families arrived at the private room at 5:40 p.m., but Gu Man and Gu Qing hadn't shown up yet, which annoyed them. Gu Ning and her family arrived on time, and all of them were in designer brands. And with the nourishment of Gu Ning's power, Gu Qing and Gu Man looked much younger than before. The changes in Gu Qing and Gu Man were too obvious to be ignored, and everyone was impressed and stunned. Especially Lin Li Juan and Wen Yulan, as women, they were both jealous of Gu Qing and Gu Man. Lin Li Juan then said acidly, "Oh, you're rich now, so you all have the air of rich people." Read latest chapters at bin/c/o/m only. Rich? Are they richer than my uncle? Gu Qingshi asked. He acted arrogant because he didn't believe that Gu Ning's family was richer than Gu Qingxiang's family. Exactly! Gu Yining echoed. Gu Yining and Gu Qingshi were both young and didn't know much about their family conflicts. They had only heard that Gu Man and Gu Qing's family were rich now, but had no idea how rich they were. Qingshi, Yining, shut your mouths. Gu Qingyang criticized them. He didn't want to annoy Gu Ning, and wouldn't allow his son and daughter to do so. Gu Yining and Gu Yining felt aggrieved, but had to listen to their father. So what? You did the same thing before, so why don't you continue doing it? Gu Ning retorted directly. Lin Li Juan was mad. Gu Qingyun understood that Gu Ning was different now, but he still believed that she was inferior to them. Seeing Gu Ning being so proud, Gu Qingyun was furious. Gu Ning, how dare you talk to my mother like that? Gu Qingyun, who do you think you are? And why can't I talk to your mother like that? Gu Ning sneered, which irritated Gu Qingyun. Gu Qingyun abruptly stood up, like he was going to punch Gu Ning. All right. Sit down now. At this moment, Gu Qingxiang stopped his son. He was also unwilling to annoy Gu Ning and the others, because he couldn't bear the result. Gu Qingxiang had warned his family not to find fault with Gu Ning and the others like they had done before, so Gu Qingyun had to listen to his father and curbed his anger for now. Have a seat, you all. Gu Qingxiang said to Jiang Su and the others. Jiang Su and the others sat down afterwards. When they were just seated, the dishes were placed on the table one by one. The old lady was unusually polite this time, but they all knew that it wouldn't last long, because it was all an act. Without surprise, the old lady opened her mouth after the dishes were all on the table. Jiang Su, you really kept it a deep secret and none of us found out that you're a big boss until Qingxiang met you in the hotel. What? You're rich now, so you're going to abandon us? The old lady took it for granted that Jiang Su owed them. Jiang Su hadn't run his business for very long, but he wasn't weak anymore. Gu Ning had also reminded him to be confident and never yield. Otherwise, those shameless people would take full advantage of them. Therefore, Jiang Su became tough now to protect his family. Thus facing the old lady's harsh questions, Jiang Su stayed calm and argued, you must be joking. If we were going to abandon you, we wouldn't have come here today. And we've always lived our life separately. Nobody cares about each other, so why should I tell you what I'm doing now? In other words, it was none of their business. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. The old lady was stunned. Although she knew that Jiang Su's explanation made sense, she couldn't accept it. Well, do you mean that it's not your filial duty to support your mother-in-law? The old lady still believed that she had the right to share Jiang Su's money. Mom, we respect you as always. We have never missed a red envelope for you during any festival. Isn't it enough? Jiangsu asked. Jiangsu was telling the truth. Although Gu Qing and Gu Man had been poor in the old time, they had never forgotten to prepare a red envelope for the old lady. It's different now. You're rich and you're supposed to give me more. The old lady lost her patience and removed her disguise. She never liked the red envelopes that Gu Qing and Gu Man had prepared for her, because there wasn't much money inside, but she had still taken them out of greed. Mom, do you really lack money? Qingxiang is very rich, so it's unreasonable that you're short of money. Jiangsu said. Obviously, he aimed at Gu Qingxiang. In fact, Jiangsu understood that Gu Qingxiang wouldn't treat his mother badly, because he was a filial son, although he treated his brothers and sisters unfairly. Thus, Jiangsu only said it to criticize the old lady. The old lady was furious. Gu Qingxiang of course supported her well, but it didn't mean that she would stop wanting more. Jiangsu, it doesn't make sense. Even though mom doesn't lack money, shouldn't you be a filial son-in-law and take good care of our mother? Lin Lijuan said, like it was really Jiangsu's fault. Okay, why don't you tell me what you and your husband have done for your mother, so that I can learn from you? Jiangsu said sarcastically. He knew that a selfish man like Gu Qingxiang definitely wouldn't support his mother-in-law, and the old lady was too mean to allow Gu Qingxiang and Lin Lijuan to give Lin Lijuan's family anything. In that case, Lin Liyuan had no position to blame Jiangsu. However, in the old lady's eyes, she thought that Gu Qingxiang and Lin Lijuan had to have secretly given Lin Lijuan's family something behind her back, so she was mad at once. Lijuan, did you secretly give your mother money from our pocket? It was unbearable if Lin Lijuan did that. Mom, I didn't. Lin Lijuan immediately denied, but she was lying. Although Lin Lijuan denied it, the old lady still warned her, listen, you married my son, and you're part of our family now. Never take money out of our pocket to support your relatives. Sure I won't, Lin Lijuan said, but didn't take it seriously. Ha ha. Gu Ning laughed. Since she married your son and is part of your family now, you don't allow her to take money out of your pocket to support her relatives, so you shouldn't ask your daughters to do the same thing. Don't forget that your daughter is married too. What Gu Ning had said was like a slap which slammed across the old lady's face, and she felt utterly embarrassed. However, the old lady didn't want to give up, so she played the blame game. Jiangsu has no parents and he should regard me as his mother. His is mine too. Hearing that, Jiangsu and the others were all shocked and amused by the old lady's stupidity and shamelessness. Gu Ning snapped at her, I've never seen such a shameless person like you in my whole life. Who do you think you are? Being humiliated by Gu Ning, the old lady lost her reason. Who do you think you are then? You're merely AB*ST*RD. Bang! Gu Ning hit the table heavily with her hand angrily, which scared everyone around the table. She looked straight into the old lady's eyes icily and asked, do you still remember what I warned you? Gu Ning's tone was quite threatening. The old lady was terrified and couldn't utter a word. Gu Qingxiang knew that today's family reunion was completely ruined. What the old lady had said and done had to irritate Gu Ning. However, before he could stop his mother, Gu Qingyang criticized the old lady, Mom, how can you say that? Ning is your granddaughter after all. Gu Qing had told Gu Qingyang that they came to today's family reunion just for his sake. If Gu Qingxiang's family and the old lady dared to annoy them, they wouldn't tolerate it. Therefore, Gu Qingyang was cornered now, because he was unwilling to irritate either of them. She is the old lady unconsciously retorted. She totally forgot that Gu Qingxiang had reminded her to not call Gu Qingxiang B*ST*RD again. However, the only lady only cared about herself. Enough! Gu Man interrupted before the old lady could say the humiliating word again. Gu Man had really had enough of such a toxic relationship with her mother. We came here today just because of Qin Young. If you don't like us, you can get out of here right now. This time, Gu Man was really mad, and nobody dared to ignore her. What? How can you say that to me? The old lady couldn't believe her ears. Everyone else around the table was greatly surprised too, including Gu Ning. However, Gu Ning loved to see Gu Man being tough and strong. Gu Man, how can you talk to our mother like that? Gu Qinxiang scolded Gu Man. He knew that the old lady was being unreasonable, but he couldn't accept the fact that Gu Man dared to drive them away. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. Why can't I? I don't owe you anything, and you have no right to judge us. Gu Man said. Gu Qinxiang was struck dumb and didn't know how to retort because Gu Man was simply telling the truth. Gu Qing added, when Man and I were poor, you never respected us and always made fun of us. We didn't care. All we wanted was to live our own life. However, now we're rich, and you want to share our money or even grab our fortune away? I mean seriously, who do you think you are? You, how dare you? The old lady was furious, but she still believed that she was right. I think that you're the ones who should get out of here right now, the old lady almost yelled in anger. Saying that, she threw an empty glass at Gu Man. Mom! Everyone was shocked, but it was too late to stop the crazy old lady. However, right at this key moment, Gu Ning raised her hand and caught the empty glass in the air. The scene astonished everyone once more. How is it possible? How can Gu Ning be so agile? Everyone had the same questions in their mind. Gu Ning gave the old lady a sharp look. And with the effect of her power, it seemed like the air in the room was frozen. The old lady was trembling from fear and coldness. She lost her breath and almost had a heart attack. Although Gu Ning hated the old lady to death, she wouldn't kill her. Don't force me to kill you. Gu Ning clenched her teeth. Saying that, she tightened her fingers and the empty glass was immediately smashed into pieces. T/his chapter is up.d by nvel bin.co/m. Everyone rounded their eyes in shock looking at Gu Ning with horror. How is it possible? Ning Ning! Gu Man was scared and ran to check Gu Ning's hand without delay. Seeing that Gu Ning's hand was fine, Gu Man was relieved. Uncle Qin Yang, I think that it's enough for today. Either they get out of here right now, or you can leave with them. And we'll stay and finish the meal, Gu Ning said in an undeniable tone. It wasn't Gu Ning who was forcing Gu Qingyang into a corner because they had come to an agreement beforehand. Having witnessed what just had happened, Gu Qinxiang was terrified. Even if Gu Ning didn't drive him away, he wasn't willing to stay here any longer either. He said to Lin Li Juan, let's leave now. Within seconds, Gu Qinxiang's family disappeared. Gu Qinyan, who had claimed that he was going to teach Gu Ning a lesson, also escaped as soon as possible. Gu Qinyan's family stayed, but lost their appetite. They behaved carefully, in case Gu Ning got angry. On the contrary, Gu Ning and her family enjoyed the meal, as if nothing had happened. In the past, Gu Qinyang had been better than Gu Qing and Gu Man, but now everything has changed completely. Gu Qinyang was scared of Gu Qing and Gu Man after today. Before long, they separated too. Gu Qinyang's family felt like they had been released from prison when they left the restaurant. Gu Qing and Gu Man are totally different now. When Yulan sighed with jealousy. However, she also felt lucky that there were no long-standing grudges between them, Gu Qing and Gu Man. In fact, Gu Qinyang's family had always despised Gu Qing and Gu Man because they had earned less, but now Gu Qing and Gu Man were both far richer than them. Although Gu Qingyang had a cradle-to-grave job, he had no power at all, and his salary was barely enough to improve his family's living standards. The old lady fell down, trembling, and had a fever the moment that she got back home. Gu Qingyang immediately sent his mother to the hospital and called Gu Qingyang. Gu Qingyang's family went to visit the old lady at once. Although the family reunion didn't end well today, the old lady was Gu Qing and Gu Man's mother after all, so Gu Qingyang still called them and told them that the old lady was sick. Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't feel sad or nervous when they heard the news because they had already given up the so-called family connection with their mother. Nevertheless, they would go and visit their mother since the old lady was sick. Gu Ning was reluctant to see the old lady again, but she was worried about Gu Man, thus she went to the hospital along with them. However, Gu Ning didn't walk into the hospital, but waited outside. The old lady had already lost consciousness when she was admitted to the hospital. And because of what had happened today, Gu Qingyang didn't dare to criticize Gu Qing or Gu Man anymore. In that case, it was quite harmonious in the patient room. While Gu Ning was waiting outside, she received Ling Xiaoting's call. "Ning Ning, what are you up to right now?" Ling Xiaoting asked. "I'm at the hospital," Gu Ning answered. Find updates on n/v/elben.co/m. What's wrong? Do you feel uncomfortable? Ling Xiaoting was nervous. "No, it's not me. Just a relative," Gu Ning explained. "Oh." Ling Xiaoting sensed that it wasn't an important person from Gu Ning's tone. "When will you be back?" Ling Xiaoting asked again. "A while later, I guess," Gu Ning said. She didn't think further about why Ling Xiaoting asked that. Gu Qing and Gu Man left the hospital a few minutes later. And when they had almost arrived at Fanghua Luxury Mansion, Gu Ning received Ling Xiaoting's call once more. However, because Gu Man was with her, it wasn't convenient for Gu Ning to answer Ling Xiaoting's call. She cut the call off and texted him. Ling Xiaoting then sent a message back to her. "I'm waiting for you outside of Fanghua Luxury Mansion in a black car." Reading the message, Gu Ning's hands trembled and her phone almost fell. She was so excited and surprised that Ling Xiaoting would come to City F. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. "Mom, Peihan is inviting me to sing karaoke, so I'll get out at the gate of Fanghua Luxury Mansion," Gu Ning lied. "Don't be home too late." Gu Man knew that Chu Peihan was Gu Ning's friend, so she didn't stop Gu Ning. And it wasn't very late at that moment. Gu Ning then got out of the car at the gate of Fanghua Luxury Mansion. The minute that she was out of the car, Gu Ning noticed the black car parked at the front. She knew that Ling Xiaoting was in it, but wasn't in a hurry to go over there until Jiang Su drove away. Ling Xiaoting left the car without delay when Gu Ning walked near. He had seen Gu Ning earlier on, but had to curb his desire to hug her because her family hadn't left yet. Watching Gu Ning stepping towards him, Ling Xiaoting was thrilled and couldn't wait to hold her in his arms, but he still controlled himself to not do so because there were a lot of people around. Ling Xiaoting could only open the car door for Gu Ning quietly, but there was a burning desire in his eyes. Gu Ning had the same feelings. Once Gu Ning was in the car, Ling Xiaoting closed the car door and sat in the driver's seat. He clasped Gu Ning's hand in his, fixing his eyes on her with passion. "Where should we go now?" Gu Ning asked. "No idea," Ling Xiaoting replied. "Just talk for a while in the car?" Gu Ning asked. Ling Xiaoting frowned a little. Apparently that wasn't what he wanted. "Well, then what should we do?" Gu Ning asked. I'm staying in a hotel tonight," Ling Xiaoting said. He was implying something. Gu Ning flushed and turned her face aside. "Let's go there then." With Gu Ning's permission, Ling Xiaoting's eyes lit up at once and he drove ahead to the hotel. To calm her embarrassment, Gu Ning changed the topic. Did you finish your work? Yeah, Leng Xiaoting said. When will you go home for the New Year festival? Gu Ning asked. Tomorrow afternoon, Leng Xiaoting replied. During their small talk, a picture suddenly emerged before Gu Ning's eyes. She saw that a shadow secretly came to a car and pried the car door open before he cut the brakes. Gu Ning recognized that it was in Guangyao's car. Although she didn't foresee what was going to happen next, it would be dangerous if the brakes of the car were broken. Gu Ning immediately realized that Guangyao was in danger, and called him at once. Guangyao answered her call within seconds. Before he could say anything, Gu Ning asked, Uncle An, where are you now? I'm in the Cadden Hotel. The party is over and I'm going home. What's up? Guangyao said. I have something important to discuss with you. Don't leave and wait at the hotel for me, Gu Ning said seriously. Sure, Guangyao replied. When Leng Xiaoting heard that Gu Ning was going to meet Guangyao, his face changed slightly, but he understood that it had to be an emergency. Anyway, they would spend the night together, so he didn't mind changing the place. Gu Ning also understood it was strange that she suddenly changed the plan, so she explained, well, Uncle An is at a party tonight, and I just had a premonition that something bad is going to happen, so I have to stop it. I'm sorry if that sounds strange. It did sound strange, but Leng Xiaoting chose to believe Gu Ning as always. In the parking lot, a pair of eyes stared at Guangyao from a car which was only 10 meters away from Guangyao's. Seeing that Guangyao answered a call and went back into the hotel, the man thought that Guangyao had something else to deal with, so he kept waiting in the car. Leng Xiaoting drove fast and steadily, so they soon arrived at Cadden Hotel. The moment that Gu Ning got out, she called Guangyao. Guangyao told her he was in a tea room, and Gu Ning along with Leng Xiaoting quickly went to meet him. Only Guangyao and Zhang Xuanjie were in the tea room when they came inside. Nice to meet you, boss and Mr. Leng. Guangyao and Zhang Xuanjie greeted Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting walked over and sat down. Zhang Xuanjie poured 2 cups of tea for them. How was the party? Gu Ning asked. Not bad. We just had some conflicts with Wu Lianqin, Guangyao replied. Why? Gu Ning asked. Well, one of my friends introduced a boss of a clothing company to me tonight. The clothing company is going to build a factory, and is looking for a qualified construction company. Wu Lianqin wanted to strike the deal, but the boss of the clothing company chose to cooperate with me after we discussed the project at the party. It's normal that businessmen compete against each other in the same industry, but Wu Lianqin blamed me for it and threatened me, Guangyao said. Gu Ning was slightly mad. Although she wasn't very sure that Wu Lianqin had something to do with the cut brakes, she sensed that Wu Lianqin was involved. Other than Wu Lianqin, have you annoyed anyone else recently? Gu Ning asked. Except for Hongyun Real Estate, we haven't annoyed anyone else, Guangyao said. It was impossible that Hongyun did it, because Hongyun already went bankrupt. In that case, it was highly likely that Wu Lianqin was behind that. To be honest with you, I came to you because I suddenly had a bad premonition about you. I'm worried that something bad might happen to you. Although it sounds strange, my premonitions are always right, Gu Ning explained, trying to make it sound reasonable. Guangyao and Zhang Xuanjie had the same reaction as Leng Xiaoting. Although they felt that it was indeed strange, they chose to trust Gu Ning. In fact, they trusted Gu Ning even more than Leng Xiaoting did. In Leng Xiaoting's eyes, Gu Ning was his love, so he would naturally believe her, but in Guangyao and Zhang Xuanjie's opinions, Gu Ning was like a goddess who could make the impossible become possible. Alright, that's all I wanted to say. Let's leave now, but we should check the car first in case any accidents happen. One can never be too careful. Gu Ning couldn't directly tell them that the car was damaged, so she just reminded them to be careful. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting followed in Guangyao to the underground parking lot. Once they were in the parking lot, Gu Ning observed the surroundings to see whether the man was still here. Some criminals would stay at the site to see the result in person. As Gu Ning glanced around the parking lot, she met the man's eyes in the car. The man's face changed when Gu Ning caught his sight. Obviously, he was the one who cut the brakes. Before long, Zhang Xuanjie found that there was something wrong with the car. "Boss, the brakes were cut," Zhang Xuanjie said. "What?" Hearing that, Guangyao was shocked. He abruptly looked at Gu Ning and felt lucky that Gu Ning's accurate premonition saved his life. Otherwise, he wouldn't have seen tomorrow's sun. Was it Wu Lianqin? Guangyao assumed and believed it was highly possible. "I think that it's possible, but we don't have evidence. We can turn to the manager of Cadden Hotel first and check the surveillance cameras to find out who did it." Although Gu Ning had already seen the man in the car, she still needed the proof. She wouldn't let the man get away with it because he dared to hurt her staff. If Gu Ning hadn't had the premonition, Guangyao and Zhang Xuanjie would have been killed. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. "I'll find the manager right now," Zhang Xuanjie said and quickly walked to the hotel hall. The criminal who was hiding in the car didn't hear their discussion clearly, but he knew that his scheme had been exposed, and was quite surprised. However, the criminal didn't realize that Gu Ning already knew that it was him who had damaged the brakes, so he didn't leave right away, but stayed to see what would happen next. Zhang Xuanjie told the manager of Cadden Hotel what had happened to their car, and the manager was astonished. He hadn't been bought by money, so he immediately let Zhang Xuanjie watch the surveillance cameras. Find updates on n/v/elben.co/m. Although the shadow in the surveillance cameras wasn't very clear, because the man was wearing a mask and hat, they could see the whole process when the man was cutting the brakes. Luckily, they saw that the man was still hiding in the parking lot, so the manager called the police at once. Guangyao was an important figure in City F, thus the police arrived soon. The manager showed the video to the policemen when they arrived, and 3 of them went straight to the car where the criminal hid afterwards. The man didn't realize that he had been exposed until the 3 policemen ran to him, but it was too late for him to escape now. And when the criminal was brought back to the hotel, he finally figured out that there were surveillance cameras in the parking lot. It was obvious that this man was too stupid to be a criminal. Gu Ning told Guangyao to request that the police force the man to admit his crime on site. Guangyao was influential in City F, so the police were willing to help him. However, Gu Ning was the one who questioned the criminal. With the solid proof on the table, the man couldn't deny it. He didn't want to be sentenced alone, so he told Gu Ning who was behind him. Wu Lianqin's secretary had called him and promised to give him 50,000 yuan if he succeeded. He got a deposit of 20,000 yuan. There were messages and call recordings as evidence. And although it was Wu Lianqin's secretary who instigated him to do it, everyone knew that Wu Lianqin's secretary had followed Wu Lianqin's order. Wu Lianqin, it's really him. Guangyao was mad even though he had known the answer. However, they still lacked enough evidence to sentence Wu Lianqin. The police would handle it. No matter what the result was, Gu Ning made up her mind to get revenge on Wu Lianqin. It was late when they finally settled the mess. Gu Ning told Guangyao and Zhang Xuanjie to have a rest. Guangyao's car was damaged, and was left in the parking lot waiting to be repaired. Thus Cadden Hotel arranged a car to send Guangyao and Zhang Xuanjie back. After Guangyao and Zhang Xuanjie were gone, Gu Ning sat in the car, while Leng Xiaoting went to book a room. Leng Xiaoting would go to the room first, and Gu Ning would follow him up later. She was worried to be seen by people who knew her, because it might cause rumors. While Gu Ning was waiting in the car, she surfed the internet searching for information about Wu Lianqin. Wu Lianqin was a famous businessman in City F, and there should be an introduction for him. Without much effort, Gu Ning got screenshots of Wu Lianqin's photos and introduction. She sent those materials to Gao Yi and told him to investigate Wu Lianqin's background to see whether he had done anything illegal. As a professional killer, it was also necessary to be an excellent detective. It wasn't difficult for Gao Yi to investigate Wu Lianqin. Ling Xiaoting booked the room and told Gu Ning its number. He understood that Gu Ning wanted to keep it private, and he respected her. When they were both in the room, Ling Xiaoting couldn't wait to undress Gu Ning and spend the whole night with her in the bed for a second longer. The three policemen took the criminal back to the police station and went to arrest Wu Lianqin's secretary without delay. They also informed Wu Lianqin that he needed to come to the police station as soon as possible. Find up Tedovels on n/v/elben.co/m. Since their scheme was already exposed, Wu Lianqin's secretary had to admit it, but he didn't mention Wu Lianqin at all. He only claimed that he disliked Nguan Yao and tried to kill him. The secretary protected Wu Lianqin because he knew that Wu Lianqin would hurt his family if he told the truth. Wu Lianqin was furious when he found out that their scheme had been exposed, but he wouldn't admit that he was involved since his secretary was willing to be the scapegoat. Because Wu Lianqin denied it, the police couldn't arrest him. And his secretary was made a scapegoat for what happened. When Nguan Yao heard the result, he wasn't surprised, nor was he mad, because Gu Ning had told him that she had another plan to teach Wu Lianqin a lesson. When it was almost 11 p.m., Gu Ning called Gu Man. She made up an excuse that Chu Pei Han wasn't in a good mood, so she wouldn't be coming home tonight. Gu Man didn't doubt it and agreed. The next day, Gu Ning still stayed with Ling Xiaoting. It was raining outside, so Gu Ning and Ling Xiaoting ate at the hotel. Meanwhile, Wu Lianqin's secretary and the criminal were sentenced to 3 years in jail for attempted murder. In City G, Liu Shirkuan and the others were also sentenced by the court, but the New Year festival was tomorrow, so Yan Jinglin told Gu Ning that the Hongyun Group's properties would be put up for auction after the festival. Gu Ning wasn't in a hurry, so she agreed. Ling Xiaoting didn't leave the hotel and Gu Ning until it was 5 p.m. Before he left, Ling Xiaoting took out a box from the trunk of his car. He said that it was a New Year gift for Gu Man and that there were 2 pieces of ginseng inside. They seemed old and had to be expensive. Other than ginseng, there were also many other precious herbal medicines in the box. Since it was a gift from Ling Xiaoting, Gu Ning accepted it with pleasure. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. After that, Gu Ning sent Ling Xiaoting to the airport. Ling Xiaoting didn't want to bother Gu Ning, but he wanted to seize every second that he could be with her, so he let Gu Ning send him to the airport. When Ling Xiaoting had left for a short while, Gu Ning received Gao Yi's call. He had gotten evidence of all of Wu Lianqin's criminal activities. Wu Lianqin was a very bold businessman, and he was too proud to destroy the proof. Thus it was very easy to investigate his criminal history. Corrupt Wu Lianqin had illegally taken over 40 million yuan, which was the funds of a construction project, putting it into his own pocket, and had even used shoddy construction materials. He had also schemed against his competitors in business and deliberately caused a car accident. Except for his corruption, the rest was all done by others who worked for him, so there was no direct proof to prove that he was guilty. However, corruption alone was enough to sentence him to prison. With the evidence in her hands, Gu Ning told Kay to find the email address of the chairman of the Tianhua Group and send all of Wu Lianqin's dirty secrets to the chairman. Tianhua Group was the parent company of Tianhua Real Estate, in which Wu Lianqin was the executive president. Gu Ning didn't send the email in person, because she didn't want to be involved. Her aim was to unseat Wu Lianqin after all. The chairman of the Tianhua Group was furious when he read the email and immediately demanded that people look into it. Gu Ning shared her dinner with Gao Yi and Xiaoya. She wasn't going home yet, so she put Ling Xiaoting's gift into her telepathic eye space. During the meal, Gu Ning received Chu Xuanfeng's call. Chu Xianfeng asked where she was and wanted to meet her in person. Gu Ning had a sense that it had something to do with Siti, but either way, she agreed to meet with him. Chu Xianfeng came alone, but showed up with a box of gifts. He told Gu Ning that it was Siti who asked him to give her the New Year gift. Gu Ning was surprised, but it was also predictable. She didn't accept it immediately, but instead used her jade eyes to see what was inside. If they were too expensive, she would decline. Without doubt, the objects inside were truly expensive, like 2 bottles of 85-foot Medusa from the Conti winery in Rome, which were worth at least 190,000 yuan. And there were many precious herbal medicines too. Gu Ning hesitated because it was Siti, not Ling Xiaoting, who sent such expensive gifts to her. "I don't think that I should take them," Gu Ning said. Although they were nothing to Siti, they were really very expensive. Knowing what was on Gu Ning's mind, Chu Xianfeng almost begged, "Please accept it. Otherwise I'll be in big trouble." Gu Ning didn't know whether Chu Xianfeng was being serious, but she didn't want him to get in trouble. After a short time of hesitating, Gu Ning accepted the box of gifts in the end. Anyway, she had received much more expensive gift than that from Siti before. "All right, I'll call him to thank him for the gifts," Gu Ning sighed, and took the box. Seeing that Gu Ning took the box, Chu Xianfeng was relieved. Actually, he wasn't lying. If he failed to get Gu Ning to accept the gifts from his boss, he wouldn't have a peaceful New Year festival this year. Gu Ning called Siti the moment Chu Xianfeng was gone. "Hi, how are you doing?" Siti said once he answered the call. "Great. And I just received your New Year gift. They're too expensive," Gu Ning said. "Why don't you buy me a meal when you're in City G to thank me?" Siti said. Apparently, he was creating chances to meet Gu Ning alone. "No problem," Gu Ning said. Since she had already accepted Siti's gifts, it was reasonable that she invited him to dine together. They said Happy New Year to each other before hanging up. After dinner, Gu Ning went back home. Gu Man was quite surprised to see Gu Ning coming back home with 2 boxes. "Ning Ning, what are these?" "New Year gifts from my friends." Gu Ning placed the boxes on a table and opened it. When Gu Man saw what was in the boxes, she exclaimed, "Ning Ning, your friends are so generous." None of the objects were cheap. "Yeah, we're very good friends," Gu Ning said but didn't explain further. After seeing the gifts, Gu Man suddenly thought of something and said, "Oh, the old lady is paralyzed." Gu Man wasn't very sad when she said it, but her mood was affected to some extent. The old lady was her biological mother after all. However, it was good news to Gu Ning. If the old lady was paralyzed, she wouldn't be able to cause Gu Man and Gu Qing trouble anymore. Gu Ning was always busy ever since she had come back from City F, and she didn't have much time to talk with Gu Man, so she hadn't mentioned Tang Yunfan yet. And tomorrow was the New Year festival. Gu Ning wasn't willing to bring it up, in case Gu Man would be affected. The next day was the New Year festival. Gu Ning chatted with Ling Xiaoting on the phone for about half an hour early in the morning. Ling Xiaoting was in his apartment, and he would go to the Ling family's house in the afternoon for the New Year's Eve family dinner. Thinking of Ling Xiaoting and his family, Gu Ning felt sorry for him. Luckily, he had a close relationship with his grandpa. Otherwise, Gu Ning would certainly invite him to spend the festival with her. In the morning, Gu Ning called Gao Yi and Xiaoya and invited them to come over. Jiang Su's family also came to Gu Ning's home to spend the New Year festival together. After lunch, they were going to prepare for the New Year's Eve family dinner. Ling Xiaoting had his lunch with Su Jinchen, Si Ming and the other teammates in the capital. He wouldn't have time to gather together with them after the New Year's festival, so he decided to advance their meeting. They also understood that Ling Xiaoting was eager to meet Gu Ning after the festival, so they didn't complain. The source of this content n/o/v/l by n. However, one of them felt sad that he was still single. That one was precisely Su Jinchen. Si Ming and Chiu Yusin got along quite well recently. And although they weren't boyfriend and girlfriend yet, they would be sooner or later. The capital, in the Ling family's old house. All the members of the Ling family gathered together in the living hall, chatting with one another, except for Ling Xiaoting. There were grudges among some of them, but none of them would be so dumb as to argue during the New Year festival, especially in front of Master Ling. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. It's almost 4 p.m. Why is Xiaoting still absent? Ling Xiaoxuan asked. Hearing Ling Xiaoting's name, Ling Yuanqian's family felt uncomfortable but didn't dare to say anything. However, right at this moment, they heard Ling Changji's happy voice. Lord Ling is back. Ling Xiaoxuan abruptly stood up, running out at once. Xiaoting! Why are you so late? I thought that you wouldn't be back for the festival. I was just occupied by something, Ling Xiaoting said. Entering the front hall, Ling Xiaoting greeted the older generation one by one. Welcome home, Xiaoting. Only Master Ling was visibly excited to see Ling Xiaoting, while the rest simply remained polite. Hi, Xiaoting, Ling Xiaoming said. He wasn't as cold as his parents but didn't show any affection either. Been a while, Xiaoting, Ling Xiaoxi said with respect. However, Ling Xiaojia directly ignored Ling Xiaoting. Xiaoting, it's not dinner time yet. Could you please teach me some fighting skills now? Ling Xiaoxuan begged. Before Ling Xiaoting could say a word, Master Ling criticized Ling Xiaoxuan. It's the New Year festival. Don't be so naughty and sit down. Once Master Ling opened his mouth, Ling Xiaoxuan didn't dare to say it again and sat down quietly. Xiaoting, come here. Master Ling waved his hand and told Ling Xiaoting to sit by his side. Ling Xiaoting walked over and sat down by Master Ling's side. Master Ling then kept talking with Ling Xiaoting and cared about him very much. Seeing that Master Ling cared so much about Ling Xiaoting, others around the table were jealous. Ling Xiaojia, who was always impulsive, felt like her biological brother had been ignored and asked, Grandpa, my older brother has left home for a long time too, so why don't you care about him like that? Ling Xiaoming didn't work in the capital but in a nearby county. Although the county wasn't far away, he seldom had time to come back home. Ling Xiaoming was also an outstanding young man. With his family background, he became the head of the county when he was only 25 years old. In addition, he was promoted to be the vice mayor of a nearby third-tier city recently, and he could soon move back to work in the capital as an important official. However, no matter how outstanding Ling Xiaoming was, he was barely comparable to Ling Xiaoting. Ling Xiaoting was only half a year older than Ling Xiaoming, but he was already the youngest major general in the country's history. Xiaojia, mind your words. Since when does Grandpa not care about me? You don't know anything, so stop saying that, Ling Xiaoming instantly snapped at Ling Xiaojia. Master Ling treated Ling Xiaoting better than him, and he did feel aggrieved, but he never showed his dissatisfaction because he didn't want Master Ling to think that he was mean or selfish. What Ling Xiaojia had said merely damaged his image. I'm telling the truth. Ling Xiaojia, instead, had no idea what was on her older brother's mind. Xiaojia, close your mouth now. Ling Yuanqian also criticized her. What Ling Xiaojia had said was very inappropriate. Even though Ling Xiaoming and Ling Yuanqian both scolded Ling Xiaojia, Master Ling was still displeased. He looked to Leng Xiaojia with unhappiness and said seriously, "You're always complaining in this family. Are you living too comfortable a life for you to be that troublesome?" It was a fact that Master Ling cared more about Leng Xiaoting than Leng Xiaoming, but that was because Leng Xiaoting lost his parents when he was just a child. If Master Ling didn't care about Leng Xiaoting, nobody would. On the contrary, Lin Yuanqian's family didn't care about Leng Xiaoting, who was their cousin, at all, and even schemed against him. Ironically, the more they disliked Leng Xiaoting, the more Master Ling cared about him. Leng Xiaojia was mad but did not have the nerves to argue with Master Ling, so she lowered her head and kept silent. At this moment, Jiang Shuyuan didn't dare to defend Leng Xiaojia either. In City F, Gu Ning's family prepared many kinds of dishes on the table at around 6 p.m. And the 7 of them sat around the table chatting, laughing, and joking in harmony. Even Gao Yi and Xiaoya, who were always expressionless, smiled a lot. It was the most meaningful New Year festival that they had ever celebrated. It was the same for Gu Qing and Gu Man's families. After the New Year's Eve family dinner, they gathered together to watch the Spring Festival Gala. Gao Yi and Xiaoya didn't leave until it was very late. And Gu Ning invited them to come over tomorrow again. When it was just past midnight, Gu Ning was about to call Leng Xiaoting, but Leng Xiaoting called her first. "Happy New Year!" Leng Xiaoting said the moment Gu Ning answered the call. Gu Ning smiled gently. "Happy New Year! Where is my red envelope?" "I'll give it to you in a few days," Leng Xiaoting said. Although Gu Ning was just joking, she wouldn't reject if Leng Xiaoting prepared a red envelope for her. They talked for a little while longer before hanging up. Gu Ning checked her phone later and many new messages were coming in. Other than Hao Ran and her other close friends, Qin Yifan also sent her a message. Gu Ning immediately typed a message and sent it to all of the contacts on her phone. It was too late, so she didn't call them one by one. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. The next morning, Gu Ning called those masters one by one. Although she had already sent them a message to wish them a Happy New Year, it was more meaningful if she called. The first one Gu Ning called was her grandpa Tang Haifeng. "Girl Gu, Happy New Year!" Tang Haifeng was happy to hear from Gu Ning and couldn't wait to wish her Happy New Year the moment that he picked up the phone. Gu Ning smiled and said, "Happy New Year, Grandpa. Where is my red envelope?" Tang Haifeng had told Gu Ning to call him Grandpa directly, so Gu Ning followed his request. "Of course I've prepared a red envelope for you, but you have to visit me in person first," Tang Haifeng said and joked. However, he really missed Gu Ning. Ever since they had separated in City Tang, he always missed Gu Ning. Tang Haifeng didn't tell his family about the fact that Gu Ning closely resembled Tang Yunfan, because it didn't prove anything if they were only alike in appearance. "Sure, I will once I'm free. However, the red envelope must be worth it. If it isn't enough to pay for my plane tickets, I'll be mad," Gu Ning said and acted greedy. Tang Haifeng laughed out loud with pleasure. "Haha, don't worry. Grandpa will give you a thick red envelope." "Very well, then I'll call you when I come to visit you," Gu Ning said. Read latest chapters at novel.bin/c/o/m only. Be quick and don't let me wait for you for a long time," Tang Haifeng said. Although Gu Ning was just joking about the red envelope, Tang Haifeng took it seriously and prepared a thick red envelope for Gu Ning. "I won't," Gu Ning said and hung up. It was the New Year festival, so everyone in the Tang family gathered together in the house. Except for Tang Yunfan, who stayed in his study the entire time, the rest of the people all heard what Tang Haifeng had said on the phone. Seeing Tang Haifeng being so happy after answering the call, everyone was quite surprised and had no idea what had happened. "Grandpa, since when do you have another granddaughter?" Tang Jiakai asked. He was the eldest grandson in the Tang family. Tang Jiakai inherited his family's beautiful appearance. His skin was smooth and shiny and his features were attractive. The young man had an air of natural nobility. Apart from that, Tang Jiakai's features resembled Gu Ning's to some extent. Maybe that was the effect of genes. Just a young girl I met, Tang Haifeng said. When he mentioned Gu Ning, his face lit up with pride, because he was proud of Gu Ning. What? Everyone was astonished again. Master Tang had just left home for a week, and he already regarded a stranger who he had met as his granddaughter? However, the next moment, Tang Haifeng looked upset. When I was in City Tang, I had a heart attack at its airport. It was Girl Gu who saved my life. Tang Haifeng was reluctant to bring it up because he didn't want to worry his family. What? Everyone was shocked this time. Dad, why didn't you say anything about it? I didn't want to worry you, Tang Haifeng replied. I think that you just want to impress us because of the young girl who you met, Tang Yunheng hit the point. Gu Ning had rescued Master Tang, and his family definitely appreciated her kind behavior, but wasn't it too much to take Gu Ning as his granddaughter? Tang Haifeng understood their concern, and sighed, I regard Girl Gu as my granddaughter not only because she saved my life, but also because she strongly resembled Yunfan. Nobody would doubt it if I said that they're father and daughter. What? Everyone was more than shocked now. Tang Haifeng added, Yunfan refuses to get married and I'm wondering if Yunfan would be willing to be the young girl's adoptive father. The girl had a hard childhood and lost her father when she was just a baby. However, the girl said that she first wants to know Yunfan's opinion. I thought that Yunfan won't agree according to his character, so I took her as my granddaughter. Does she know who you are? Tang Jiakai asked. He doubted Gu Ning's aim, which was reasonable because the Tang family wasn't a simple family after all. She didn't know it at the beginning, but I told her later and gave her 2 black cards of the hotel and shopping mall under the Tang family's name, Tang Haifeng said. Did she accept it? Tang Yunhong's wife, Yan Shuyu, asked. Tang Haifeng knew what was on their mind, and explained, I know what you're suspecting. Although she's just 18, she isn't simple at all. Not only has she saved my life, but she also improved my heart condition with a special way of massage. I now feel much more energetic than ever. I had a checkup the other day, and the doctor said that it's very unlikely that I'll have heart disease again. Everyone rounded their eyes in shock now. Really? A special way of massage can cure heart disease? Is the young girl a human being? Even the most advanced medical science wasn't able to cure heart disease, only improve it. Gu Ning, on the other hand, could cure it completely just with a massage? It must be a miracle. Everyone had thought that Gu Ning had only administered first aid to Tang Haifeng when he had a heart attack. It wasn't very difficult anyway, but to their astonishment, Gu Ning had cured Tang Haifeng's heart disease. And, Tang Haifeng continued, she has no interest in the Tang family's properties because she alone unseated an influential family in City Tang and established a big jade provider with billions of yuan in assets. And that's just the beginning. Although there was no news that Gu Ning had unseated the Wang family, Tang Haifeng believed that she had to have been involved. Ever since Gu Ning had gotten the raw material exploitation right, the biggest raw material supplier and the colorful jade provider were managed by the same person, which was enough to show that Gu Ning was the boss. Apart from that, Tang Haifeng believed that Gu Ning would be even more successful in the future. Hearing about what Gu Ning had achieved at such a young age, Tang Haifeng's family was too amazed to say a word. Tang Haifeng continued to tell the story about Gu Ning. When I left City Tang, she also gave me several pieces of natural red coral which are worth millions of yuan. Although millions of yuan are nothing, it's rare to see natural red coral. Tang Haifeng's family now had mixed emotions and felt a little ashamed of their suspicion towards Gu Ning. However, it wasn't their fault. After all, they had no idea what Gu Ning had achieved until now. Moreover, there were many money hunters nowadays, and they needed to be careful. Wow, I'm really curious about her. Grandpa, when will she come to City B? Tang Jiakai asked. Vist and Velben, CM for new updates. Tang Yinhang and Yan Shuyu also had a great impression of Gu Ning. Both of them wanted to meet her as soon as possible too. They weren't selfish and arrogant people, so they now appreciated Gu Ning, not because she was rich but because of her outstanding ability. No matter how rich Gu Ning was, she couldn't compare with the Tang family anyway. Well, she will come here after the entrance examination to college, Tang Haifeng said. He also looked forward to seeing Gu Ning again. It'll be a long time. Tang Jiakai was slightly disappointed. After chatting with Master Tang on the phone, Gu Ning called Master Bai, Master Yan, and Master Fu too. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. The capital, in the Ling family's house. Guests were visiting the Ling family in the morning. They were a middle-aged couple along with a young woman, who was around 23 years old. Happy New Year, everyone, the middle-aged couple smiled politely and said with pleasure the moment they walked inside. Happy New Year, Grandpa Ling, Uncle Ling, and Aunt Ling, the young woman also greeted everyone with great respect. The middle-aged man was called Shen Yanfeng. He was the cousin of Master Ling's deceased wife. The middle-aged woman was his wife, Chen Qiuyin, and the young woman was his daughter, Shen Zhilin. The Shen family wasn't an influential family in the capital but was super rich and famous to some extent, mainly because of their relationship with the Ling family. Master Ling loved his deceased wife deeply, so he was naturally willing to take good care of the Shen family. Master Ling smiled, Happy New Year! You didn't need to bring so many gifts. Shen Yanfeng shook his head lightly and said with sincerity, Of course we should bring some gifts to visit you. We can't come here with empty hands. Master Ling smiled but didn't say anything further. Ling Yuanqian opened his mouth instead, Please, everyone be seated. After that, Yuyin told the servants to help Shen Yanfeng and Chen Qiuyin with all the gifts in their hands and to pour cups of tea for them. Shen Yanfeng glanced around after he sat down. Where are the children? Xiaoming is in his room, Xiaojia is busy with her design, and Xiaoxuan, Xiaoxi, and Xiaoting are in the backyard, Lin Yuanjun said. Hearing that Lin Xiaoting was here too, Shen Zhilin's eyes lit up with excitement. Although she tried her best to hide her affection towards Lin Xiaoting, it was quite obvious from her face. In fact, everyone knew that Shen Zhilin admired Lin Xiaoting. In the beginning, Master Ling had intentionally introduced her to Lin Xiaoting. The Shen family was a close relative to the Ling family after all, and Shen Zhilin was a pretty good girl too, but unfortunately, Lin Xiaoting didn't like her at all, so Master Ling gave up in the end. However, the Shen family wasn't willing to miss any chance that they could build a closer connection with the Ling family, so Chen Qiuyin said, Zhilin, why don't you go and have fun with the younger generation? It would be boring if you stayed here with us. However, it was just an excuse. The Shen family wanted to marry Shen Zhilin into the Ling family, not only because Shen Zhilin admired Lin Xiaoting, but because they wanted to stick together with the Ling family. In that case, a marriage alliance would be the best way to achieve their goal. Lin Xiaoming was a better choice than Lin Xiaoting when it came to marriage, because Lin Xiaoming was more easygoing, while Lin Xiaoting was always cold and aloof, but Shen Zhilin only admired Lin Xiaoting, so her parents had to follow her desires. Anyway, as long as the man was from the Ling family, they would be satisfied. If you'll excuse me, I'll go to visit with Xiaoxi now, Shen Zhilin said politely to the elderly. Enjoy yourself. Although Master Ling understood what was on their minds, he couldn't stop them, because they used Ling Xiaoxi as the excuse. However, no matter what, the result would be the same as usual. Ling Xiaoting wouldn't care about Shen Zhilin. In addition, Ling Xiaoting already had a girlfriend now, so Master Ling wasn't worried at all. Shen Jilin went to the backyard and noticed Ling Xiaoxuan, Ling Xiaoxi, and Ling Xiaoting. Ling Xiaoting was teaching Ling Xiaoxuan kung fu, while Ling Xiaoxi was watching them from the swing. Seeing the extraordinarily handsome Ling Xiaoting, Shen Jilin's heart was pounding fast, and her eyes were full of admiration now. She knew that Ling Xiaoting was always cold and remained aloof from others. He had never cared about her, but it wouldn't stop her from loving him. Jilin, come here and have a seat. Ling Xiaoxi was excited to see Shen Jilin. Among the young generation, Ling Xiaoxi was the only one who had a close relationship with Shen Jilin. Ling Xiaojia was too proud to be friendly to Shen Jilin, and Shen Jilin didn't like her either. Hearing Ling Xiaoxi's voice, Shen Jilin drew her gaze back from Ling Xiaoting and smiled towards Ling Xiaoxi, walking ahead. Xiaoxi, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Ling Xiaoxi said. Ling Xiaoxi moved aside a little so that there was enough space for Shen Jilin to sit. Xiaoxi, when did Xiaoting come back? Shen Jilin asked and pretended that she was just chatting casually. Yesterday afternoon, Ling Xiaoxi said. Then when will he leave? Shen Jilin asked again. No idea, Ling Xiaoxi replied. She didn't know that Shen Jilin admired Ling Xiaoting, so she didn't think further about why Shen Jilin would ask those questions. Ling Xiaoting was teaching Ling Xiaoxuan kung fu, thus Shen Jilin didn't bother him in case it would seem rude. After a while, Ling Xiaoting finished his lesson. Shen Jilin immediately walked over. Happy New Year, Xiaoting. However, Ling Xiaoting only answered lightly and turned around walking into the house. This wasn't the first time that Ling Xiaoting had ignored Shen Jilin like that. Shen Jilin felt sad but didn't mind, because she was already used to it. In order to allay her embarrassment, Shen Jilin turned to Ling Xiaoxuan. Xiaoxuan, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, Ling Xiaoxuan replied politely. He wasn't as cold as Ling Xiaoting after all. When it was time for the meal, everyone went back to the front hall. In the hall, Ling Xiaojia and Ling Xiaoming also came downstairs to join them. Happy New Year, Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen, they said. Happy New Year to you. Shen Yanfeng and Chen Qiuyin replied with pleasure. Shen Yanfeng even complimented, I haven't seen you in a long time, and Xiaoxuan has grown much taller and handsome now. Xiaoxi is also prettier. Although those were simply courtesies, Ling Xiaoxuan and Ling Xiaoxi still thanked them. Thank you, Uncle Shen. Oh, where is Xiaoting? Master Ling asked. Vist and Velben, CM for new updates. He's changing in his room, Ling Xiaoxuan replied. Before long, Ling Xiaoting came back outside. The moment he appeared, Shen Yanfeng couldn't move her eyes off him. Even Shen Yanfeng and Chen Qiuyin appreciated Ling Xiaoting very much. It would be wonderful if their daughter could marry Ling Xiaoting. Xiaoting is a really outstanding young man. He became a major general at such a young age. No matter whose daughter marries him, she will be super lucky. Shen Yanfeng complimented. However, once he complimented Ling Xiaoting like that, it seemed like Ling Xiaoming wasn't good enough to be outstanding. Although Ling Xiaoming was quite excellent among his peers, he was hardly comparable to Ling Xiaoting. Therefore, Ling Xiaoming's family was displeased, but they couldn't retort because it was the truth. By the way, Xiaoting, do you have a girlfriend? Shen Yanfeng asked Ling Xiaoting. Yes, Ling Xiaoting answered with alacrity. Ling Xiaoting understood what was on the Shen family's mind, so he decided to not keep it a secret anymore to make them give up on the idea. However, Ling Xiaoting's simple answer caused a sensation among the people around the table. Everyone except for Master Ling rounded their eyes in shock. What? Seriously? Ling Xiaoxuan couldn't believe his ears. Yes, Leng Xiaoting said. Thinking of Gu Ning, Leng Xiaoting looked gentle and his expression was full of love, which amazed the rest of the Leng family because none of them had ever seen him like that. After the great shock, the Shin family were all disappointed, but they weren't in despair yet. As long as Leng Xiaoting was unmarried, Shin Jilin still had hope. And since Leng Xiaoting had a girlfriend, he wasn't gay. Shin Yinfeng pretended to gossip. Haha, I had no idea that Xiaoting already had a girlfriend. Who is the girl? Someone I love, Leng Xiaoting said. He didn't mention his girlfriend's background at all. In other words, he didn't care about family background, as long as he loved her. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. Hearing that Leng Xiaoting's girlfriend wasn't from a powerful family, the rest of the people in the Leng family were relieved, because there wouldn't be another force of support behind Leng Xiaoting, but what they didn't know was that Leng Xiaoting's girlfriend was quite a promising businesswoman, and she would be more powerful and influential than any of the other richest families in the capital in the near future. Master Leng laughed and echoed, "We never care about family background. As long as Xiaoting is happy, I'll support him." The Shin family weren't dumb and dropped the topic at once. The dishes were placed on the table soon, so they moved to the dining hall. Shin Jilin, on the other hand, lost her appetite when she heard that Leng Xiaoting already had a girlfriend. After the meal, Leng Xiaoting left right away. Shin Jilin felt sad, but she couldn't do anything. If she continued flirting with Leng Xiaoting after she knew that he had a girlfriend, it would be her fault. At that time in City F, Wu Lianqin was arrested by the police at his home after the New Year's Eve. And his dirty secrets were soon exposed, which shocked citizens in City F. Because of the New Year festival, Wu Lianqin was arrested a day later than was planned. However, once the festival was celebrated, he was immediately arrested. Wu Lianqin was sentenced to at least 10 years in prison. Since Wu Lianqin was thrown into jail, Gu Ning wouldn't bother Tianhua real estate, because it didn't belong to Wu Lianqin after all. Gu Ning also heard other news today. And he told them in their WeChat group that the couple who had stolen his family's money was also caught by the police, but the money had already been spent, so it was impossible to get it back. Gu Ning had deep sympathy for Guangyao. Luckily, Guangyao's life was getting better ever since he started working for Gu Ning. In the afternoon, Jiang Zhongyu and Master Su came to visit Master Leng. "Where is Xiaoting?" Jiang Zhongyu asked. He knew that Leng Xiaoting came back for the New Year festival, but he never saw him. "He's gone," Master Leng said. "What?" "It's still the Spring Festival now, and Jinchen is still home." Master Su was surprised. "He's in a hurry to meet his girlfriend," Master Leng replied. Although Leng Xiaoting didn't stay to keep him company, Master Leng thought that it was more important for his grandson to get married. "Haha, it seems that his girlfriend is more important than his grandpa." Jiang Zhongyu joked. Master Leng rolled his eyes. "I'm happy to see that he cares about his girlfriend. At least I don't need to worry about his marriage anymore." "Haha, you're right," Master Su and Jiang Zhongyu agreed and laughed. "Speaking of Xiaoting's girlfriend, she is our family's lifesaver," Jiang Zhongyu said. "Lifesaver? What do you mean?" Hearing that, both Master Leng and Master Su were confused, so was everyone else around them. "You don't know about it?" Jiang Zhongyu was surprised. He had thought that Master Leng already knew. "What happened, Grandpa Jiang? Why is Xiaoting's girlfriend your family's lifesaver?" Ling Xiaoshuan asked with burning curiosity. Jiang Zhongyu felt cornered because he didn't know why Ling Xiaoting didn't tell Master Leng and wasn't sure whether it was appropriate for him to tell Master Leng about the accident. "Jiang, just tell me," Master Ling urged. Jiang Zhongyu thought for a while. He believed that maybe Ling Xiaoting forgot to mention it to Master Leng, so he said, "Haoyang was kidnapped not long ago. You all knew about it, right? Yes. They nodded. Ling Xiaoxuan said, it was Shouting who rescued Haoyang. Yes, but the girl who suddenly emerged from beneath the overpass and beat Qin Huichuan was precisely Shouting's girlfriend. Jiang Zhongyu said. What? Hearing that, everyone was shocked. To their astonishment, the girl who beat Qin Huichuan was Ling Xiaoting's girlfriend. It was so unbelievable. I didn't see her in person, but Xinhua told me that the girl fainted after rescuing Haoyang. She was admitted to the hospital and Xinhua saw Shouting sitting at the girl's bedside holding her hand in the patient room, Jiang Zhongyu added. Holding her hand? Everyone immediately believed that it had to be Ling Xiaoting's girlfriend. Ling Xiaoxuan instantly took out his phone and watched the video again. Although the girl's face wasn't clear, it was amazing to see her agile movements. In the beginning, everyone thought that Ling Xiaoting's girlfriend was an ordinary girl. Unexpectedly, she was very incredible. Is she a female soldier? Only Master Ling knew that Ling Xiaoting's girlfriend was just a senior student in a high school. For the second time, Master Ling had the feeling that Ling Xiaoting's girlfriend could be more outstanding than he had expected. All in all, everyone was amazed by Ling Xiaoting's girlfriend, who they hadn't even met yet. Even Ling Yuanqian's family made up their mind to investigate her. Meanwhile, Ling Xiaoting arrived at City F. Gu Qing and Gu Qing didn't have many friends, so nobody came to visit them during the spring festival. Gao Yi and Xiaoye joined them for dinner today as well. When it was about time to eat, Gu Ning received Ling Xiaoting's call. She made an excuse and left her home without hesitation. The moment that Gu Ning walked out of Zone G, she saw Ling Xiaoting standing by the car. Seeing Gu Ning, Ling Xiaoting opened the car door for her. Gu Ning quickly walked towards him and got in the car. Happy New Year, this is for you. Ling Xiaoting handed a red envelope to Gu Ning after he got in the car. Gu Ning was struck dumb for a second, but she soon realized what was going on. However, the red envelope was pretty thin. No way, it's so thin. Is there just a single yuan inside? Gu Ning asked. However, she was just joking. Of course not, Ling Xiaoting said. Gu Ning didn't use her jade eyes to see what was inside, because she wanted to open the gift in person. She took it and could immediately tell what was inside from the feel of the envelope. It was a card. Is it a bank card? Gu Ning thought to herself. She was right. There was a credit card in the red envelope. Why? Gu Ning was surprised. She just wanted a red envelope for fun, but he gave her an additional credit card. Buy anything you like, Ling Xiaoting said. Although Gu Ning didn't lack money, it showed a man's love for you if he was willing to spend money on you. Aren't you afraid that I'll max it out? Gu Ning asked. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. It's fine. I have more cards. Ling Xiaoting didn't care at all. It was good news if Gu Ning maxed his card out because it meant that he was useful in her heart. On the contrary, he was afraid that Gu Ning wouldn't use his card because he knew that Gu Ning didn't lack money. Ha ha, Gu Ning snorted with laughter. It seems that my boyfriend is super rich. It was a gift from Ling Xiaoting, so Gu Ning accepted the additional credit card. She knew what she should do and what she shouldn't, and she absolutely wouldn't use Ling Xiaoting's card for no reason. She didn't lack money, and she wasn't used to spending a man's money either, but if it was a gift from her boyfriend, she would love to use it. Ling Xiaoting flushed a little and asked, "What do you want to have for dinner?" No idea, what's your opinion? Gu Ning asked. Ling Xiaoting thought for a while, let's go to a nearby restaurant. Great! Gu Ning replied. During the meal, Gu Ning received Chu Peihan's call. Chu Peihan invited her to see the fireworks show at Qingjiang Square at 10 p.m. It wasn't allowed to set off fireworks in cities, so people could only do it in an empty space far from the downtown. Qingjiang Square was at the riverside, and people were used to setting off fireworks there during the Spring Festival. Gu Ning thought for a while and agreed. Su Anya called soon after Gu Ning ended the call with Chu Peihan. She also invited Gu Ning to watch the fireworks show. Although Gu Ning and her friends weren't very close to Su Anya yet, they were willing to be friendly to her. Therefore, Gu Ning invited her to watch the show along with them. After dinner, Gu Ning went there with Leng Xiaoting. The fireworks show began at 10 p.m., but Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting arrived at 8:30 p.m. Apart from the fireworks show, there were many fun activities in Qingjiang Square too, like Chinese lanterns, acrobatics performance and so forth. Read latest OVLS at nv/e/l/buy.com. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting went to buy 2 flower lanterns. They wrote down their wishes and put the flower lanterns on the river. After that, they went to buy sky lanterns and set them free into the air. A short time later, Chu Peihan and Yu Mixi arrived, followed by Mu Ku and An Yi. They all greeted Leng Xiaoting when they saw him. Su Anya arrived afterward, and there were 2 other pretty girls by her side. One was around 15 years old, while the other was around 20 years old. Gu Ning, it has been a while. Did you forget me already? If I hadn't called you today, you probably wouldn't have invited me to have fun with you guys. Seeing Gu Ning, Su Anya ran over and hugged her. They had only met Su Anya 3 times since they had known each other, but they all got along quite well. Gu Ning was Su Anya's lifesaver, so she always admired and appreciated Gu Ning. If Gu Ning hadn't helped her in that dangerous situation, Su Anya would probably be dead now. Impossible. I'm just afraid that you're busy, and I plan to call you on your birthday. Gu Ning smiled. Su Anya was from a super rich family, so she wasn't as free as others. Well, if you don't call me, how could you know whether I'm busy or not? Su Anya said. All right, it's my fault. Let me pay for your night snacks. Gu Ning said. Well, that doesn't sound bad. Su Anya was satisfied. Ha! You're so excited to see Gu Ning and hugged her, but you ignored the rest of us. Chu Peihan complained. Oh! I'm so sorry. Su Anya felt a little embarrassed and greeted them at once. Happy New Year, everyone! Happy New Year, everyone said. Oh, please let me introduce you, Su Anya said to them. This is my younger cousin, Su Anhao, and this is my older cousin, Jean Curson. Su Anhao was the younger one, while Jean Curson was the older girl. However, when Su Anya introduced Jean Curson, she seemed displeased. Obviously, she disliked her older cousin. Gu Ning also hated Jean Curson's attitude towards Leng Xiaoting because she kept staring at Leng Xiaoting like he was her prey. Even though Leng Xiaoting didn't look at Jean Curson at all, Gu Ning was still unhappy. After that, Su Anya introduced her friends to her cousins. These are all my good friends. Gu Ning, Chu Peihan, Yu Mixi, Mu Ku, and Yi, and this is. Su Anya didn't notice Leng Xiaoting until now, and she was stunned. Wow, he's so handsome. Gu Ning, is this your boyfriend? Su Anya was just guessing, because the man stood right behind Gu Ning, and the two looked so beautiful together. Bingo! You're right, Chu Peihan said. Hearing that Leng Xiaoting was Gu Ning's boyfriend, Jean Curson was a little disappointed, but she didn't give up. Instead, she was excited. Ah! Su Anya was surprised. Nice to meet you, and Happy New Year, brother-in-law. Leng Xiaoting was happy to hear Su Anya call him brother-in-law and replied politely, Nice to meet you too, and Happy New Year. When Chu Pei Han and the others greeted Leng Xiaoting earlier, he didn't say much at all. Gu Ning noticed Leng Xiaoting's different reaction and understood what was on his mind. She was amused. At this moment, Hao Ran, Qin Zixuan and Zhang Tianping arrived. "Hi, Happy New Year," they said with excitement. "All right, we're all together now. Let's have a look around before the fireworks show begins," Chu Pei Han proposed. In the following hour, the group of them ambled around. After a long while, Yu Mixi and Gu Ning went to the ladies' room while the others waited outside. Seeing that Gu Ning was absent and the others were busy chatting, while Leng Xiaoting stood by himself, Jean Curson seized the chance to flirt with him. "Hi, nice to meet you. My name's Jean Curson," she said. "Jean Curson, what are you doing?" Su Anya criticized. She knew what her older cousin planned to do. In the beginning, nobody thought that it was inappropriate when Jean Curson went to talk with Leng Xiaoting. So when Su Anya snapped at her, everyone was confused. "I just thought that he's alone and bored, so I wanted to chat with him," Jean Curson said and acted as if she was an innocent child. They didn't talk with Leng Xiaoting because they knew that Leng Xiaoting wasn't talkative and only loved to chat with Gu Ning. They had no intention to shut him out. Visit novilbin.c/m for the L-test updates. Stop acting. I know what kind of person you are. If you dare to hurt my friend, I'll teach you a lesson. Su Anya wouldn't believe anything that Jean Curson had said and warned her plainly. It was her mother who had forced her to bring Jean Curson out. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. Hao Ran and the other boys were too young, so Jean Curson wouldn't flirt with them. Unexpectedly, Gu Ning's boyfriend came here too. And the man was too sexy to be ignored. Jean Curson was pretty on the outside, but she was actually a dreadful flirt. She never missed a chance to flirt with handsome men and her next step was always to get laid. Su Anya had no interest in Jean Curson's personal affairs, nor did she tell her family, but if Jean Curson dared to hurt her friends, she would get revenge on her without a doubt. Hearing what Su Anya had said, everyone immediately understood that Jean Curson wasn't as pretty on the inside as she was on the outside. Therefore, they were all on alert now. None of them would allow her to hurt their best friend. Jean Curson had to give up her plan under the pressure of them for now, but she would find another chance to try again. Gu Ning and Yu Mixi walked out later. Gu Ning noticed that everyone looked at Jean Curson unkindly. Although she didn't know what had happened, it was obvious that Jean Curson had done something wrong and annoyed everyone. Is it because of Leng Xiaoting? Thinking of that, Gu Ning was mad, but she didn't say anything. Leng Xiaoting's sight was on Gu Ning the entire time, once she appeared. He clasped her hand at once. "Sorry, we are single. And it hurts." Hao Ran covered his chest all of a sudden like he was in great pain. "Find yourself a girlfriend then," Chu Pei Han teased. "I want to, but how?" Hao Ran complained. "We have many single girls here. Isn't there anyone you like?" Qin Zixuan asked. Hao Ran sighed and agonized. "We're too familiar to date each other. I'm afraid that we wouldn't be able to be good friends any longer if it doesn't work." Although Hao Ran hadn't fallen in love with any of his good female friends, what he said was right. They were teenagers now, and nobody could promise that they wouldn't change. However, while Hao Ran was saying that, Mu Ke gave Yu Mixi a resigned glance. Obviously, he agreed with Hao Ran. Yu Mixi had no idea that Mu Ke had glanced at her, but Gu Ning noticed it and was surprised. Does Mu Ke admire Yu Mixi? It was their personal affairs and Gu Ning wouldn't get involved, but as their good friend, she would love to help if she could, so she said, "You're right." However, when you truly like someone and want to build your future together with them, you won't hesitate or worry so much, because nobody can foresee what will be like. Hearing what Gu Ning said, Muku seemed to cheer up a little, but Gu Ning didn't know what he was thinking deep down in his heart. All right, it's almost 10 p.m. Let's go back to the square. Afterward, the group of them walked to the square together. Given what had just happened outside of the ladies' room, Hao Ran and the others deliberately kept Jean Curson away from Leng Xiaoting. Even though they knew that Jean Curson couldn't steal Leng Xiaoting away from Gu Ning, as Gu Ning's close friends, they still didn't want Jean Curson to be near Leng Xiaoting or Gu Ning. Jean Curson understood why they were doing it. She was so mad, but couldn't do anything about it. Read the latest stories and novilbin.com. When they arrived at the square, there were a lot more people there than before. The place where the fireworks were placed had been separated because people might be injured by the falling fireworks if they came too close. There were many kinds of fireworks on the empty space, and the workers were ready to set them off once it was time. Once 10 p.m. struck, the workers started to set off the fireworks in sequence. Boom! Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. Following the loud explosive sound, small missiles flew into the air one by one, and a large group of fireworks like a handle with huge umbrellas exploded in the air. A cluster of dazzling lights were illuminating the night sky, like a clump of flowers in full bloom which was floating with golden powder. A series of fireworks burst high in the air. And finally, like countless meteors with long tails, those fireworks reluctantly slipped from the night sky. Wow, it's so amazing, people kept praising the show. The night sky was as bright as the day with the effects of fireworks, and the shapes along with the colors of the fireworks changed the entire time. Various images of animals and Chinese characters were shown in the air. The fireworks show lasted for half an hour, and then they went to have a night snack. Jean Curson had no chance to get closer to Leng Xiaoting from the beginning to the end, which greatly upset her, but she could do nothing about it. After the night snack, Leng Xiaoting drove Gu Ning home. Chu Pei Han and Hao Ran, who had cars, would drive the others back. Su Anya also drove here today, so she would go home on her own. Leng Xiaoting didn't leave for Su Jinshan's apartment until he sent Gu Ning back to Zhongji, and she had disappeared from his sight. It was the spring festival, so it wasn't appropriate for Gu Ning to stay out for the night. When she got home, Gu Ning received Yumixi's message. Yumixi asked Gu Ning what she should give Su Anya as a birthday gift. Gu Ning thought for a while. Su Anya was from a super rich family, after all, so they couldn't give a gift that was too cheap, but Yumixi was still a student, so it wasn't necessary for her to give Su Anya a very expensive one either. Therefore, Gu Ning advised Yumixi to buy a Chanel wallet. Yumixi had just won a lot of money at Dihao Clubhouse, so it wasn't difficult for her to buy a designer brand wallet. As for the formal clothing, both Gu Ning and Yumixi would wear the same set they had worn to attend Master Qin's birthday party. They were students and there was no need for them to waste money on gowns. The next day, Gu Ning used an excuse that she was going to visit her friends. However, she actually went to meet Leng Xiaoting. And she didn't come back home until it was very late as usual. When Gu Ning got back, Gu Man wasn't asleep yet, so Gu Ning tried to bring the topic up. "Mom, I'm leaving for university soon, and you'll be alone at home. Don't you want to date another man?" Hearing that, Gu Man was struck dumb for a second, but she soon calmed down. "Ning Ning, don't worry about me. I'm used to being alone." "Mom, are you still missing my biological father?" Gu Ning asked. Gu Man's body stiffened for a second. It was obvious that she thought of her good old memories, but she didn't say a word. Gu Ning realized that Gu Man had to be thinking of Tang Yunfan. "Mom, have you ever thought that you couldn't find his body, so maybe he never really died?" Hearing that, Gu Man's body stiffened again. "If he didn't die, why didn't he come back to me? Without a doubt, Gu Man had also thought about that possibility, but he had never appeared again, so she believed that he had to be dead because she refused to think that he was a selfish man. You told me before that he lost his memory when he met you. Maybe he got his memory back after the car accident, but coincidentally lost the memory of when he was with you. Gu Ning deduced from all the information she knew. Is it possible? Gu Man regained hope, but couldn't believe that it was possible. If he's still alive, but just forgot what happened during the year when he was with you, if he's not married yet, if he still loves you, if you still have chance to meet each other again, would you give it a try? Gu Ning asked with caution. Gu Man remained silent because she had no idea herself. She would be lying if she said that she didn't miss him, but she wasn't sure whether her love towards the man in the past would continue when they met each other again after 18 years. Gu Ning wouldn't force Gu Man to give her the answer. She also believed that it was meaningless to worry about that right now. They would know the answer once they met each other once more. During the night, Gu Man kept thinking about what Gu Ning had said to her and what she had been through during that year. It was a long night without any sleep. Although Gu Man had been with Ning for only a year, what she had gotten during that year, namely love and care, was something her cruel family could not provide. Therefore, she had been deeply in love with the man, and unable to forget him. Otherwise, in the highly conservative past, she wouldn't have had sex with Ning before marriage and even given birth to his child. During the past 18 years, she had never thought to marry another man. Although it had ruined her reputation because she was pregnant before marriage, there had been other men who had proposed to her, but she had turned them down. Thus, Gu Man indeed loved Tang Yunfan deeply. Although she thought what Gu Ning had said wasn't likely to be possible, she couldn't help hoping it was true. She wasn't sure whether she would still have the same affection towards Tang Yunfan now like she had loved Ning in the past, but Tang Yunfan was the only man she had loved throughout her lifetime. He was her child's father, so she hoped that he could have a good life, even if he was already married and had his own family now. The next day when Gu Man got up, she had quite obvious dark circles. Gu Ning felt sorry for her mother, but they had to face it sooner or later. After all, Gu Man still loved Tang Yunfan and Tang Yunfan was also missing her, which was the reason why he wasn't willing to get married. They had fallen deeply in love with each other and had a baby in the past. If Gu Man would choose a man to spend the rest of her life with, Gu Ning hoped that the man was Tang Yunfan. Gu Ning massaged Gu Man and used her magical power to relieve Gu Man's fatigue. Gu Man was going to visit her friend, Wang Sufan, today. Wang Sufan was the one who had sent Gu Man to the hospital when Gu Man had fainted at work. Gu Ning told Gao Yi and Xiaoya to follow Gu Man today, because they were both free, while Gu Ning went on a date with Leng Xiaoting. The two didn't know what to do today, so they simply ambled on the road. Even so, they enjoyed being together. Ning Ning, Leng Xiaoting called her. What? Gu Ning replied. Ning Ning, Leng Xiaoting called her again. What? Gu Ning looked at Leng Xiaoting with confusion. Nothing, just wanted to call your name, Leng Xiaoting said. Gu Ning was amused and teased. Does my name sounds very beautiful? Of course it does, Leng Xiaoting said with sincerity. Well, go on then. Gu Ning said. Ning Ning. Leng Xiaoting called once more, and Gu Ning laughed. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. The two walked to the government center and the view was quite pleasant. There was a large park with trees and stone trails. Many citizens would come here to have a walk. At that moment, a government car stopped in the parking lot in front of an office building. Two men got out of it afterward. Gu Ning recognized one of them at first glance. The man was the secretary of the Municipal Party Committee in City F, Yuan Jisung. And he was followed by his secretary. However, when they had just gotten out of the car, a crazy man with a knife in his hand dashed out from nowhere and yelled, "Yuan Jisung, go to hell." Yuan Jisung was shocked still, so was his secretary and the people around them. However, right as the knife was about to touch Yuan Jisung's chest, a person ran over like lightning and kicked the crazy man away. With a sharp sound, the knife cut through Yuan Jisung's clothing over his chest. There was an open cut, but luckily the knife didn't hurt the skin. Gu Ning was the person who kicked the crazy man away in time. And once the crazy man was kicked away, Leng Xiaoting went ahead and caught him. "Let me go! Let me go!" The crazy man struggled violently, but Leng Xiaoting got complete control of him and he could only yell like a maniac. The crazy man's yell aroused Yuan Jisung and his secretary's consciousness. Yuan Jisung could barely stand straight, he could have been killed just then. The secretary was scared too, but he wasn't the killer's target, so he was soon able to move. "Are you all right, Mr. Yuan?" "Yes." Yuan Jisung's voice was trembling, and he was still frightened, but he tried his best to calm down. Meanwhile, nearby security guards ran over at once and took the crazy man from Leng Xiaoting's hands. However, the crazy man kept shouting, "Yuan Jisung, I'll kill you. I'll kill you now. If it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have been dismissed." After taking a few deep breaths, Yuan Jisung calmed himself down and looked to the man coldly. "If you hadn't behaved illegally, you wouldn't have been fired. You've asked for the result yourself, so you can't blame others for that. Take him away now." Vist and Velben, CM for new updates. The security guards instantly took the crazy man away. After that, Yuan Jisung turned to Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting. He bowed and thanked them with sincerity. "Thank you so much for saving my life. Mr. Yuan, please don't say that." "We're glad that you're safe," Gu Ning said. Yuan Jisung was an upright official. If he had been a corrupt official, Gu Ning wouldn't have helped him. Although there were no people who were 100% good in this world, as long as he did his job well, he was a qualified government worker. "You've saved my life, so you're my lifesaver," Yuan Jisung said. He didn't think that others should serve him just because he had a high social status. If Gu Ning hadn't kicked the crazy man away in time, he would have been killed or severely injured. Yuan Jisung took a name card out of his pocket and gave it to Gu Ning. "This is my name card. If you encounter any trouble in the future, you can call me for help, but it has to be legal." "Thanks." Gu Ning, of course, wouldn't reject it. "Mr. Yuan, what just happened will certainly go abroad soon. Please don't expose me to the news. I don't want to attract a lot of attention." Gu Ning was modest, kind and kept a low profile, which left a good impression on Yuan Jisung. "Sure," Yuan Jisung said. He would respect her wants. And then they separated. As for what Gu Ning had done in such a dangerous situation, Leng Xiaoting didn't blame her but clasped her hand. He was still worried about her safety. Although he knew that Gu Ning was good at kung fu, he still cared about her more than anyone else. The news that the Secretary of Municipal Party Committee, Yuan Jisung, had almost been stabbed went viral on the internet soon. Big news, the Secretary of Municipal Party Committee in City F, Yuan Jisung, was stabbed by a crazy man at the outside of the government center. A young girl kicked the crazy man away on time and her partner caught the criminal. Photo attached. The photo was taken after Yuan Jisung was rescued because everyone was shocked at that time and none of them were in the mood to take pictures. Before long, someone exposed the criminal's identity. The crazy man was the vice director of the finance department, Zhang Chao. He had been found guilty of power abuse by Yuan Jisung and had been dismissed. Zhang Chao cared too much about fame and money, so he went crazy after his dismissal and came to attack Yuan Jisung. Zhang Chao was sentenced to 10 years in jail in the beginning, but now it seemed like he would end up with a life sentence. People all complimented the young girl who had rescued Yuan Jisong from the sharp knife. The photo was taken from afar, so Gu Ning's and Leng Xiaoting's faces weren't clear, but Hao Ran and the others who were familiar with them recognized them at once. They all called Gu Ning to ask whether she was safe. Gu Ning's phone kept ringing the entire time, but she didn't lose her patience, because she knew that they cared about her. Many reporters came to interview Yuan Jisong after the accident. They were curious about the young girl who had saved Yuan Jisong's life, but Yuan Jisong declined to reveal more details about her. And people admired the low-profile young girl more. Leng Xiaoting was assigned a task a few days later and he had to leave. The night before Leng Xiaoting left, Gu Ning stayed with him. Leng Xiaoting didn't know when he would see Gu Ning the next time, so he touched, kissed and made love to her again and again throughout the night. Gu Ning almost passed out from the wild lovemaking. Luckily, she had her magical power to support her. Ning Ning, Leng Xiaoting called in a hoarse but amorous voice. Follow you stories at n/VELB/in.com. Yes, Gu Ning moaned in pleasure, which turned Leng Xiaoting on once more. They didn't stop for a break until they were both exhausted. However, Leng Xiaoting still held Gu Ning in his arms tightly even during the break. Xiaoting, we didn't use condoms. What if I'm pregnant? Gu Ning suddenly asked. She had used her power to protect her womb and stop Leng Xiaoting's sperms from getting inside. Gu Ning simply asked the question to test Leng Xiaoting. To be honest, Gu Ning was nervous when she asked that question because she was afraid that Leng Xiaoting would tell her to have an abortion. Leng Xiaoting's body stiffened a little when he heard the question. He had never thought about it, but if Gu Ning really was pregnant, he wouldn't mind at all. Instead, he was looking forward to it. Let's get married then, he said with alacrity. Hearing that, Gu Ning's heart pounded heavily a few times. Although she believed that Leng Xiaoting was a reliable man, she was excited and deeply touched when she heard the answer. I don't want to get married or have a child at such a young age, Gu Ning said. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting was anxious. He pressed Gu Ning to him and felt a little helpless. Then what should we do? Although Leng Xiaoting was willing to marry Gu Ning so that they could be together as a married couple, he didn't want Gu Ning to feel cornered. Seeing Leng Xiaoting being so anxious, Gu Ning comforted him. There, we can use condoms the next time to avoid pregnancy. And we can get engaged when it's the right time. We can get married after my graduation. Leng Xiaoting immediately relaxed. Su Anya's birthday came soon, and she called everyone early in the morning, in case they forgot. She informed them to come to her house at 4 p.m. to get ready for the party. Su Anya's home was in the same area of villas as Qin Yifan. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. Gu Ning had a strange feeling when she set out to attend the birthday party, but she failed to foresee anything. In case any accident would happen, Gu Ning left her home along with Gao Yi and Xiao Ya. Gu Ning went to pick Yu Mixi up first, while Chu Peihan picked Mu Ke and An Yi up, and Hao Ran would drive his brothers to the appointed location. It was only 3:30 p.m. and the party would begin at 6 p.m. None of the important figures in politics and business would arrive until it was past 5 p.m. Therefore, Gu Ning and the others didn't wear their formal clothing yet, and they decided to change later. When they were almost there, Gu Ning called Su Anya. Thus, the moment that Gu Ning arrived, she saw Su Anya waiting at the gate. Although the Su family and the Qin family lived in the same area of villas, their houses were located in opposite directions, and there was a long distance in the middle. Su Anya ran to them the moment they got out of the car. Gu Ning, Mixi, welcome. Su Anhao and Jean Curson were also there, and Jean Curson was disappointed when she saw that Leng Xiaoting was absent. Gu Ning noticed that. She was a little mad but directly ignored Jean Curson. "Let me introduce, this is Gao Yi, and this is Xiao Ye. Both of them are my drivers, bodyguards, and assistants," Gu Ning said to Su Anya. Gu Ning had told Su Anya on the phone that morning that she would be coming with 2 other friends, so Su Anya wasn't surprised. "Nice to meet you." Su Anya greeted them. "Nice to meet you too, Miss Su," Gao Yi and Xiao Ye said. "The others aren't here yet. Let's go inside. It's cold outside." Su Anya guided them walking inside. Just as they entered the living room, a middle-aged, elegant woman walked forward. She was Su Anya's mother. Su Anya had an older brother who was 23 years old, so Su Anya's mother was almost 50 years old now, but she was still charming because she took good care of her appearance. "Mom, these are all my friends, Gu Ning, Yu Mixi, Gao Yi, and Xiao Ye," Su Anya said to her mother. "Nice to meet you all." "Welcome to Anya's birthday party," Mrs. Su said politely. She didn't ask about their family backgrounds at all, because her family wasn't snobbish. Besides, Mrs. Su understood that her daughter never made friends with random people. Since she introduced them as her friends, they had to be good people. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Su," everyone said. After that, Su Anya pulled Gu Ning aside and introduced her again with seriousness. "Mom, she is the one that saved my life that I told you about." Mrs. Su was surprised at first, then thanked Gu Ning with sincerity. "Thank you so much, Miss Gu." "You're welcome, Mrs. Su," Gu Ning said politely. "Lifesaver?" Hearing that, Su Anhao and Jean Curson were shocked. "Aunt, what happened?" Jean Curson asked. "None of your business." Before Mrs. Su could say a word, Su Anya interrupted. She really hated Jean Curson. "Anya, mind your words," Mrs. Su criticized. She knew that Su Anya never liked Jean Curson, but they were cousins, and it was inappropriate for Su Anya to be so rude to Jean Curson right in front of others. "Aunt, it's my fault," Jean Curson said and acted as if she had been bullied. In fact, Jean Curson was jealous of Su Anya and hated her very much as well, but Su Anya's family was super rich and the Jean family had to maintain a good relationship with the Su family. In that case, Jean Curson didn't dare to argue with Su Anya face to face. Instead, she would play innocent and use many tricks to trap Su Anya. Su Anya's parents had criticized Su Anya many times because of that. Seeing Su Anya being criticized by her mother, Jean Curson felt much better. On the contrary, watching Jean Curson's hypocritical expression, Su Anya was really annoyed, but she didn't say anything, in case her friends would get involved in this mess. "Let's go sit inside," Su Anya said to Gu Ning and ignored Jean Curson. "Oh, right. Come on in and have a seat please," Mrs. Su said. The group of them was then seated. Mrs. Su told domestic servants to serve fruits and cups of tea to them, and they were chatting while eating desserts. Mrs. Su didn't show any disdain because they were the younger generation. Instead, she was quite talkative and amiable. Mrs. Su would ask Gu Ning about her hobbies, study and so forth, but never asked about her family background. A few minutes later, Chu Pei Han, Hao Ran and the others arrived, and Su Anya went to welcome them. They were all from super rich families, so Hao Ran, Qin Zixuan and An Yi had met Mrs. Su before. Mrs. Su was surprised that they were Su Anya's friends too. Su Anya kept a low profile all the time and wasn't willing to make friends with the younger generation from super rich families, because she thought that they were always arrogant and not easygoing. "Hi, Mrs. Su," Hao Ran, An Yi, and Qin Zixuan said politely. "Hi, welcome and come on in." Mrs. Su invited them to sit with her. Before long, Su Anya's father, Su Jinhao, came inside. There was another middle-aged man with him. However, the moment Su Jinhao appeared in Gu Ning's sight, Gu Ning was shocked, because Su Jinhao looked very pale and his forehead appeared dark black. Obviously, Su Jinhao was being affected by Yin. Gu Ning had the intention to rescue him, but not right then. Moreover, she wouldn't rescue people for no reason. The Su family was quite influential in City F, so she would choose the right time to give him a helping hand. As long as the Su family owed her, the connection between them would be stable. Gu Ning wasn't selfish, but she was building a strong network. Apart from that, Gu Ning wasn't Saint Mary. She would help people out of kindness, but she would also seize the chance to maximize her benefits. Dad! Su Anya ran to her father at once and held his arm. Dad, come here and let me introduce my friends to you. Oh, your friends? Su Jinhao was surprised by the fact that Su Anya had friends and was willing to invite them to visit her home. Su Jinhao walked over, and Gu Ning and the others immediately stood up. Nice to meet you, Mr. Su. Hi, Uncle Su. Hao Ran and those who were familiar with Su Jinhao greeted him more casually. Uncle, Dad, Jean Curson called them. The middle-aged man who was with Su Jinhao was Jean Curson's father. Hi, Uncle Su and Uncle Jean, Su Anhao said with respect. Oh, you're all here. Su Jinhao beamed when he saw Hao Ran and Yi and Qin Zixuan. Su Anya introduced Gu Ning and the others to her father again. Dad, Gu Ning is the lifesaver that I've told you about. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. Hearing that Gu Ning was Su Anya's lifesaver, Su Jinhao immediately thanked Gu Ning with sincerity. Miss Gu, thank you so much for rescuing my daughter. If you encounter any troubles in City F in the future, please feel free to call me. The Su family was generous, and Gu Ning had saved with Su Anya's life. Find new stories on nov/elbin.com. It's my pleasure, Gu Ning said. Lifesaver? What happened to Anya? Jean Curson's father, Jean Jingwei, asked with concern. Anya was almost hit by a car. It was Miss Gu who rescued Anya at the key moment, Su Jinhao said, but didn't tell them the details. After the accident had happened, the Su family had gotten revenge on both Gao Yuchen's and Wu Sinu's families. If it hadn't been for the fact that the younger generation, instead of their parents, had made the mistake, Su Jinhao would have unseated the two families. Nevertheless, the Wu family had been unseated by Gu Ning a few days ago. Wu Lianqin's father was precisely Wu Lianqin. Oh, thank you so much, Miss Gu, Jean Jingwei said, but Gu Ning caught the touch of disappointment which flashed through his eyes. It seemed that Jean Jingwei hoped that Su Anya would be in danger. Jean Curson had the same disappointed look. She also wanted Su Anya to be hit by the car. Gu Ning sneered quietly. Like father, like daughter. Both Jean Jingwei and Jean Curson hoped that Su Anya, the Su family to be specific, would be in trouble. It was obvious that the Jean family was scheming against the Su family. I won't bother you any longer, I need to discuss something with Jinwei in the study, Su Jinhao said and walked upstairs with Jean Jingwei. They chatted for a while longer. And when it was almost 5 p.m., guests started coming in twos and threes. Su Anya together with the girls, except for Jean Kixon, went to change in her room. Jean Curson had a room in the Su family's house, so she went back to her room to change. All the members of the Su family lived in the same villa. Master Su's elder son's family lived on the second floor while Master Su's younger son's family shared the third floor. Gao Yi went to get Gu Ning and Yumixi's formal clothes out of the car, and Chu Peihan asked Hao Ran to help her get her gown. Didn't I tell you not to bring gowns? I have plenty of them here, and they're all new. Su Anya said. It's fine, we prefer to wear our own dresses, Gu Ning replied. Gu Ning told Gao Yi and Xiaoya to wait in the front hall and went upstairs with Su Anya. Su Anya's room was on the second floor, while Su Anhao's was on the third floor. As for the boys, they came here already wearing their formal suits. Please go and support our new domain mangabyte.com. Su Anya's room was decorated like a princess's room. It was pink everywhere, which didn't match Su Anya's boyish character at all. Therefore, Chu Peihan laughed the moment she walked inside. Jesus! I had no idea that you liked this style. I suddenly doubt your age now. It's my mom. I can't do anything about it, Su Anya retorted. Afterward, they started to put on their makeup and gowns. Guests were arriving continuously, and all of them had received invitation letters from the Su family. The Su family was the well-known super-rich family in City F, and so their guests were also important figures. Su Jinhao and Mrs. Su went to welcome their guests in person, and each of the guests came with a prepared birthday gift. All the gifts were either designer brands or custom-made. None of them were cheap or common. When Gu Ning and the girls were all dressed up, it was almost 6 p.m. Gu Ning's gown wasn't very noticeable, but she had an air of natural nobility and elegance. Nobody could move their eyes away from her once she appeared in their sight. Jesus! Ning Ning, are you here to grab people's attention from me? Oh, no, you simply want me to fall in love with you. Su Anya teased. Although Su Anya was joking, she had to admit that Gu Ning was too attractive to be ignored. Ha ha. Chu Peihan laughed out. No way, Gu Ning already has a boyfriend. Well, I can wait. Su Anya joked. Come on, Anya. Look at you. You have no idea how charming you are. Gu Ning said. However, she wasn't comforting Su Anya. Su Anya was quite stunning today. She was wearing a long, tight dress, which accentuated her unusually thin waist. The end of the dress spread on the floor and moved lightly when Su Anya walked. Even though Gu Ning was attractive, nobody would ignore Su Anya. Of course I am. Su Anya said with confidence. To be honest, Su Anya didn't like such formal parties. She would rather drink and have fun in a bar with her friends. It was simple but enjoyable. However, as a child who was born in a super-rich family, Su Anya knew that she couldn't just do anything she liked. Today was her birthday party, but it was more like a social party for celebrities. No important figures would bother to attend her birthday party. All the attendees came here to build or enhance their network. Right at that moment, someone knocked on the door. Anya, the party is about to begin. Are you ready yet? Su Anhao asked. Yes, we'll be right out. Su Anya said and walked out with the other girls. Jean Kerson's room was on the first floor too, so she was waiting for Su Anya along with Su Anhao. When Su Anya and the other girls walked out, Jean Kerson was stunned and felt green with envy. Jean Kerson was good-looking too. She was in a mid-length dress with many small pearls as decoration and had her hair in a bun. A pair of crystal high heels made her long, slim calves look more beautiful, but when she stood with Su Anya and the other girls, she seemed less noticeable, and she was mad about that. Other than that, not to mention Su Anya, the other girls were also gorgeous. Gu Ning was elegant, Chu Peihan was sexy while Yu Mixi was full of energy. Let's go! Su Anya said, and guided the other girls, walking downstairs. Jean Kerson was left behind by herself. When a group of young, pretty girls walked down the stairs, everyone in the hall was stunned. They all looked upward to appreciate the beautiful scenery. And although Gu Ning attracted a lot of attention, Su Anya was still the focus. Join out Discord server to chat with fellow readers. https://discord.gg/6vfcq@chck for US tirais on no/v/l/bin.c0m. Many rich second-generation heirs also turned to people around them asking for Gu Ning and the other girls' identities. They're all Anya's friends. Mind your manners, boys. Su Jinhao warned. Those girls were all his daughter's good friends, especially Gu Ning, so he wouldn't allow those playboys to annoy them. Hearing Su Jinhao's warning, many rich second-generation heirs closed their mouths, but some of them didn't mind. Oh, isn't that Gu Ning? Hao Ran's mother recognized Gu Ning because Gu Ning was wearing the same gown. It is, Mrs. Liu said with surprise. Other than Mrs. Hao and Mrs. Liu, many other guests who had attended Master Qin's birthday party before recognized Gu Ning too. Yuan Jisong was standing right by Su Jinhao's side. It's her! He was also surprised. Who? Su Jinhao was confused looking to Yuan Jisong. Gu Ning, Yuan Jisong said. Su Jinhao was surprised. Do you know Gu Ning? Su Jinhao and Yuan Jisong had gone to the same high school, and they were close friends. Most importantly, what they had achieved today relied on their family background, and their support to each other was also indispensable. Because of their close relationship, others had even mistaken them as a couple of gays. She's the girl who saved my life, Yuan Jisong said. Check out LTSTVL on novl/bin.cm. What? Hearing that, Su Jinhao was astonished. Yuan Jisong had told him the gravity of the situation. If the young girl hadn't dashed out to rescue him, the knife would have been stabbed into his chest. Since Gu Ning was able to rescue a person in such a dangerous situation, she must be surprisingly agile. Thinking of the attack, let alone Yuan Jisong, even Su Jinhao felt scared. Su Anya was about to walk into the front hall. Su Jinhao curbed his astonishment towards Gu Ning and walked to Su Anya's side. He faced the crowd and smiled. Thank you so much for attending Anya's birthday party. Please enjoy yourself. Everyone congratulated and toasted the 18th birthday of Su Anya with champagne. A short while after Gu Ning and the other girls entered the front hall, Su Anya was pulled away by Mrs. Su to chat with their guests. Hao Ran and the others then came to gather with the girls. Yuan Jisong walked to Gu Ning and said, "Hi, Gu Ning, nice to see you again." Yuan Jisong didn't show any disrespect because Gu Ning was much younger than him. She was his lifesaver after all. Hi. Gu Ning smiled. Many people around them saw Yuan Jisong greeting Gu Ning on his own initiative and were all surprised. The rich playboys who wanted to pick Gu Ning and the other girls up stopped their steps right away. Hi, Mr. Yuan. Gu Ning's friends also greeted Yuan Jisong. They were all aware of what Gu Ning had done, so they weren't surprised that Yuan Jisong would come to greet Gu Ning. Yuan Jisong nodded to them as response and said, "Well, I won't bother you any longer, so I'll go over there to talk with my friends." In fact, Yuan Jisong intentionally walked to Gu Ning and greeted her, because he had noticed that some rich playboys were aiming at Gu Ning and the other girls. He did it to warn them to stay away. Haha, girl Gu, happy to see you again. Gu Changjiang and Qin Haoxing walked to them after Yuan Jisong left. Hi, Master Gu, Master Qin. Gu Ning smiled. Qin Haoxing was a little embarrassed to see Gu Ning. Girl Gu, I'm sorry for what Yiqing did to you. Please accept my apologies. What happened? Gu Changjiang was puzzled. He knew that Qin Yiqing wasn't a kind girl, and Qin Haoxing apologized to Gu Ning because of her, so Gu Changjiang thought that Qin Yiqing must have annoyed Gu Ning. Please don't mind it, Master Qin. It was just a misunderstanding. I already forgot it, Gu Ning said. Otherwise, she wouldn't have helped Qin Yiqing in the shopping mall the other day. Thanks, Qin Haojing said. It was Qin Yiqing's fault after all. It's no big deal, Gu Ning said. Qin Haojing opened his mouth wanting to say something but didn't say it in the end. Well, then see you around. After that, Qin Haojing and Gu Changjiang stepped away. Qin Haojing intended to talk about Qin Yifan because he wasn't in a good condition because of Gu Ning. However, since Gu Ning had already rejected him, it wasn't appropriate for Qin Haojing to bring it up again. Oh, I had no idea that you're a friend of Miss Su. And Qian walked to them holding Lu Jiangyu's arm. Hello, and Qian and Mr. Lu. Gu Ning smiled. Ha, it seems that you have an unbelievable network. And Qian raised her eyebrow and teased. Well, it's nothing. I even lost count how many important figures I know, Gu Ning joked. Oh. Tell me more about that. And Qian said. Join our Discord server to chat with fellow readers https://discord.gg/6vfcq@. Su Jinhao was afraid that Gu Ning and the other girls would feel uneasy in such a formal situation, so he kept glancing at them once in a while. However, when he saw that many respected figures went to greet Gu Ning, he was shocked. He had never heard of an influential Gu family in City G, so he assumed that Gu Ning must be a girl from an ordinary family. Unexpectedly, she knew so many people of high social status. Jean Curson, on the other hand, almost went crazy because of jealousy. She couldn't understand why Gu Ning was able to know so many important figures. Su Anya followed her mother making a round in the hall before she came back to Gu Ning and the other girls. Sorry about that. Please don't mind. Of course not. Gu Ning and the other girls didn't mind at all. Jean Curson thought for a second and said to Su Anya, Anya, happy birthday to you. I've prepared a gift for you. It's a jade pendant from Jade Beauty Jewelry. Jean Curson handed Su Anya an exquisite small box. While she was giving Su Anya the birthday gift, Jean Curson sent Gu Ning several provoking glances. Jean Curson believed that there were only a few people who could afford a gift which was worth over 100,000 yuan. In truth, this jade pendant was prepared by Jean Curson's mother. Jean Curson didn't think that the other girls could send more expensive gifts to Su Anya than hers. What? A jade pendant from Jade Beauty Jewelry? Wow, it must be expensive. Several young girls around them immediately surrounded them with excitement. Jade Beauty Jewelry was quite popular among rich ladies. However, the brand was too expensive. No matter how rich the family was, few parents were willing to buy such expensive jewelry for their daughters. It was inappropriate for young girls to wear such expensive jewelry at such a young age, and it was also dangerous if they encountered robbers. I have always wanted a jade pendant from Jade Beauty Jewelry, but my parents won't agree to buy one for me. They say a young girl shouldn't wear such expensive jewelry. Me too. Although my mom has a jade pendant from Jade Beauty Jewelry, and she let me put it on a few times, but I still want to have my own piece. My dad promised to give me one on my birthday, but my birthday is still half a year away. I can't wait that long. Not just the jade pendant, I want the whole set. All the young girls from rich families discussed with animation. None of them disliked Jade Beauty Jewelry. Hearing that Jade Beauty Jewelry was so welcomed and loved by them, Hao Ran and the others who knew that Gu Ning was the real boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry felt happy for her. As the boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry, Gu Ning was also in a good mood when she heard that her brand was so successful. Although Su Anya loved Jade Beauty Jewelry too, she didn't like Jean Curson. However, it wasn't appropriate for her to reject the gift right in front of other guests, so she accepted it and thanked Jean Curson. Thank you. Miss Su, would you mind if we had a look? A young girl whose father was the chairman of a big company asked. Diascover dated novels on NOV/E/Lbin.co. Sure, Sue Anya said. She directly opened the small box, and there was a jade pendant of the pink lotus type inside. It was actually the cheapest jewelry in the Jade Beauty jewelry store. Even so, it cost over 100,000 yuan. There was a price tag beside the jade pendant. It read 188,888 yuan. Wow! It cost 188,888 yuan. It's so small and so expensive. I think this jade must be of high quality. Miss Jean, you're so generous. It's my close cousin's birthday. Jean Curson said and acted as if she and Sue Anya were very close. Then she turned to Gu Ning. Well, Miss Gu, I'm curious what kind of birthday gift you've prepared for Anya? You're Anya's best friend, so I suppose that your gift has to be more expensive than mine, right? Hearing that, Sue Anya, Hao Ran, and Gu Ning's other friends were displeased. Although what Jean Curson had said wasn't wrong, her attitude was quite provoking. If Gu Ning couldn't present a gift which was much more expensive than hers, it would be embarrassing. Gu Ning's friends all knew that the gift that Gu Ning had prepared for Sue Anya was much better than Jean Curson's, but they were mad at Jean Curson's unkindness. Jean Curson, what do you mean by saying that? Sue Anya snapped at her, I don't care how much the gifts from my friends are. As long as I like them, they're priceless in my eyes. After that, Sue Anya said to Gu Ning, just ignore her. It's fine. Although Gu Ning was displeased, she understood that it wasn't the right time to argue with Jean Curson at Sue Anya's birthday party. However, Jean Curson wouldn't give up just like that. Hearing what Sue Anya had said, she was certain that Gu Ning couldn't afford an expensive gift. Anya, I didn't mean anything. I just thought that Miss Gu would give you a much more expensive gift than mine. After all, you're so close. Then, Jean Curson put on a sad look like she felt sorry for Sue Anya. It seemed that if Gu Ning couldn't send Sue Anya a more expensive gift, they weren't close friends. Hao Ran and the others all knew that Jean Curson was picking on Gu Ning because she only aimed at Gu Ning, although all of them were Sue Anya's friends. Gu Ning wanted to ignore her in the beginning, but since Jean Curson was so hypocritical, she would seem weak if she still didn't fight back. Therefore, Gu Ning looked straight into Jean Curson's eyes and said, You're right. I'm Anya's best friend, so I should give her a more valuable gift than yours. Hearing that, Jean Curson was struck dumb. If Gu Ning really could afford a much more expensive gift than hers, she would be the one who lost face in public. Even so, Jean Curson refused to believe that Gu Ning was willing to spend hundreds of thousands of yuan on a birthday gift. Oh, really? Jean Curson said. As you wish, Gu Ning said. She took out a jewelry box which was the same package as Jean Curson's gift from her handbag. It was the exclusive jewelry box of Jade Beauty Jewelry, so everyone recognized it at first glance. Jesus! It's jewelry from Jade Beauty Jewelry too, a young girl said in surprise. I'm curious to see which one is more expensive, hers or Miss Jin's, another young girl said with curiosity. However, Jean Curson was upset, because she was certain that Gu Ning's gift was more expensive than hers. The gift that she just gave Sue Anya was the cheapest piece of jewelry in the Jade Beauty jewelry store. And Gu Ning was very confident that her gift was more valuable than Jean Curson's. In that case, the price of Gu Ning's gift had to be higher than hers. Sue Anya was greatly surprised that Gu Ning had prepared jewelry from Jade Beauty Jewelry for her too. It must be super expensive. Gu Ning opened the jewelry box and a jade pendant of the ice type appeared. It was in the shape of a leaf the size of a thumb. Wow! It's so beautiful! Several young girls raised their voices in excitement. How much is this? One of them asked. Join out Discord server to chat with fellow readers https://discord.gg/6vfcq@. It's not important, but at least it's much more expensive than Jean Kerson's. Gu Ning smiled and gave it to Su Anya. Do you like it? Of course I do. Su Anhao's eyes lit up at once. She immediately threw Jean Kerson's gift to Su Anhao, who was standing by her side, and took Gu Ning's gift without delay. Seeing that, Jean Kerson was furious, but couldn't say anything. She had thought that Gu Ning was an ordinary girl who couldn't afford expensive gifts, but to her astonishment, Gu Ning gave Su Anya a much more valuable gift than hers. Anya, ours aren't as expensive as Gu Ning's, please don't mind, Chu Peihan said at that moment. In fact, the younger generation's birthday gifts were normally around thousands of yuan, and it was rare to see a gift at the price of hundreds of thousands of yuan. Of course I won't. I'm already satisfied that you're willing to attend my birthday party, Su Anya said with sincerity. They also understood that Su Anya didn't care about the price tag, and they happily gave her their birthday gifts one by one. Although their gifts were hardly comparable to Gu Ning's, they weren't cheap or common either. Su Anya didn't lack those expensive gifts at all, but these were from her real friends, so she was excited to receive them. Jean Kerson, on the other hand, was quite unhappy. She thought for a while and asked Gu Ning again, Miss Gu is so generous. May I know what your family does? Shit, I think that you just want to cause a fight. Chu Peihan couldn't curb her anger any longer. She swore at Jean Kerson with arms akimbo, like she was going to beat Jean Kerson. Chu Peihan's voice was loud and instantly attracted a lot of attention from people around them. Gu Ning immediately pulled Chu Peihan back and stopped her. It's Anya's birthday party. Don't fight. It's not me. It's this hypocritical girl. Who do you think you are to find fault with our boss? Chu Peihan said angrily. You, being humiliated by Chu Peihan, Jean Kerson flushed with anger. However, seeing that everyone was watching them, she suddenly had a scheme and put on an aggrieved face. I just saw Miss Gu being so generous, and I've never heard of a super rich Gu family in City F, so I'm curious about Miss Gu's family background. That's all. Why do you have to get so mad? It's not something shameful, unless, in the end, Jean Kerson pretended that she suddenly realized something shocking and closed her mouth at once to let others wonder. If Gu Ning wasn't from a super rich family and could afford such an expensive birthday gift, but refused to tell others her family background, it was enough for people to gossip. Hearing what Jean Kerson had just said, some already started to gossip about Gu Ning. What? Does she have a sugar daddy? No way. She's so young. Who knows? You all shut up. Hao Ran and Gu Ning's other friends got angry hearing them gossiping, and they raised their voice with one accord. Their loud voice attracted a lot more attention from the guests in the front hall. Almost all the attendees were walking or looking towards them. Hao Ran glared at Jean Kerson and said angrily, Jean Kerson, don't think that just because you're a relative of the Su family we won't punch you. Boss, I can't tolerate it anymore, and I'm going to beat her. Chu Peihan said and ran forward, but was stopped by Gu Ning again. Even Gao Yi and Xiaoyu went to Gu Ning's side without delay and stared at Jean Kerson unkindly. Jean Kerson was scared by their threatening looks. I didn't say that, they said it. Jean Kerson was terrified by Hao Ran and the others' reaction, but she still acted as if she was the victim. What's going on here? Su Jinhao walked towards them in a hurry and asked. Dad, Jean Kerson's humiliating Gu Ning. Su Anya said. Hearing that, Su Jinhao, along with other guests, all looked at Jean Kerson with unfriendly gazes. I'm not. Jean Kerson was struck dumb by Su Jinhao's sharp look. However, before Su Jinhao could say a word, Jean Kerson denied it. I was just surprised by Miss Gu's generosity, and I thought that she must be from a super rich family, but I've never heard of the Gu family in City F, so I just asked Miss Gu's family background out of curiosity. Unexpectedly, they're so mad. Honestly, many people had the same thoughts and suspicion. None of them had heard of a super rich Gu family in City F, so they were also curious about why Gu Ning could afford such an expensive gift. I don't think there is anything wrong with what Kirsten said. Why is it humiliating all of a sudden? Jean Jingwei asked unhappily. Jean Kirsten was his daughter, and he knew his daughter's character. Jean Kirsten had indeed picked on Gu Ning, but it wasn't humiliating in his eyes. It wasn't a big problem if Jean Kirsten asked directly, but she intentionally didn't finish her sentence and made people wonder and gossip, which was a huge problem. Bullshit! Hao Ran swore. He didn't care that Jean Jingwei was much older than him and was a well-known businessman, but criticized him loudly. Nothing wrong? Do you know what she had said beforehand? She deliberately made others believe that our boss has a sugar daddy. Hao Zhonglong and his wife didn't stop Hao Ran's inappropriate behavior. They were a family and their characters were alike. Therefore, they thought what Hao Ran was doing was right. Jean Jingwei was mad at being humiliated by a young boy, but couldn't retort. It was Jean Kirsten's fault after all. He then looked to Jean Kirsten with blame in his eyes. He was blaming her for causing him trouble. Jean Kirsten was scared and pointed to several young girls. They said it, not me. Those young girls were shocked and argued back. You led us to. Join our Discord server to chat with fellow readers https://discord.gg/6vfcq@. Jean Kirsten was helpless. Su Jinhao and his wife were disappointed in Jean Kirsten. To their astonishment, Jean Kirsten, who seemed cute and quiet normally, was so evil. It would ruin a girl's reputation if people thought that she had a sugar daddy. Jean Kirsten, stop acting. Nobody believes you and we're all clear about why you picked on Gu Ning. If you still have a sense of shame, apologize to Gu Ning right now. Otherwise, I'll beat you down to the floor. Chu Peihan threatened. Exactly, who do you think you are? Do you know every super rich family in City F? Don't flatter yourself. Qin Zixuan added. Check out LTSTVL on novl/bin.cm. Do you think that you're better than others just because you were born in a super rich family? Do you earn your money? You're just showing off with your parents' money. Hao Ran said. Gu Ning's friends were all criticizing Jean Kirsten, even the guests disliked what she had done today. Since it caught everyone's attention, Gu Ning thought it was time to uncover her real identity to protect her reputation as a businesswoman. Gu Ning looked at Jean Kirsten calmly and asked, "Can't I be super rich myself?" Although Jean Kirsten was terrified amid the criticisms, she unconsciously retorted with disdain. Keep bragging. Miss Gu isn't bragging. She gave Master Qin a highly valuable antique which is worth at least 5 million yuan, someone said. Exactly. Girl Gu did send me a precious birthday gift, Qin Haojing said. Well, that's all for this part, truckers. See you all in the next part.